Chapter 1. The Old Dragon's Secret. The wind howls beyond the thick stone walls of Castle Black as Jon Snow carries a steaming bowl of broth through the corridors. The Maester's chambers lie at the end of a long hallway, dimly lit by flickering torches that cast dancing shadows on the ancient stones. It is deep into the night, and most of his black brothers sleep soundly in their beds. But sleep eludes Jon tonight. Maester Aemon has been ill for 3 days now, his ancient body racked with fever and chills that seem to drain what little strength remains in his 100-year-old frame. At Lord Commander Mormont's request, Jon has taken it upon himself to tend to the old man during the darkest hours. There is something about the Master that draws Jon to him, a kindness and wisdom that reminds him of the father he left behind in Winterfell. Jon pushes open the heavy wooden door to Aemon's chambers with his shoulder, careful not to spill the broth. The room is warm, heated by a crackling fire that throws orange light across the walls lined with books and scrolls. Maester Aemon lies propped up in his narrow bed, his blind eyes staring at nothing, his breathing shallow and laboured. "Maester Aemon," Jon says softly, setting the bowl on the small table beside the bed. "I've brought you something to eat." The old man turns his head toward Jon's voice, his silver hair gleaming in the firelight. When he speaks, his voice is barely more than a whisper, rough with illness and age. Jon Snow, always so dutiful, so kind to an old man who can offer you nothing in return. Jon pulls a chair close to the bedside and sits down, studying the Maester's weathered face. Despite his blindness, there is still a sharpness to Aemon's features, an intelligence that age and sickness cannot diminish. "You've offered me plenty, Maester. Your counsel, your teaching. I learn something every time we speak." Aemon's lips curve in what might be a smile. He reaches out with one trembling hand, and Jon takes it gently in his own. The Maester's skin is paper-thin and cold despite the fire's warmth. "Do you know what it is to carry a secret, Jon Snow? A secret so heavy it threatens to crush you with its weight?" Jon frowns, uncertain where this conversation is leading. In the year he has been at Castle Black, Maester Aemon has never spoken in such a manner, never seemed so burdened by unspoken knowledge. "I suppose we all have our secrets, Maester." "Yes, but some secrets are larger than others. Some secrets have the power to reshape kingdoms, to topple kings from their thrones." Aemon's grip on Jon's hand tightens with surprising strength. "I am dying, Jon. I can feel it in my bones, in the very blood that flows through my veins. And before I die, there is something you must know." A chill runs down Jon's spine that has nothing to do with the cold wind outside. There is something in the Maester's voice, an urgency that speaks of matters far more serious than illness or approaching death. "Maester, you're not dying. You're ill, but you'll recover. You're stronger than—" "Listen to me, boy." Aemon's voice cracks like a whip, more forceful than Jon has ever heard it. "I have served the Night's Watch for more than 60 years. I have kept my vows, kept my silence, but I will not take this secret to my grave. Not when it concerns you." Jon stares at the old man, his heart beginning to pound in his chest. "Me? What secret could you possibly know about me? I'm just a bastard from Winterfell." Aemon releases Jon's hand and struggles to sit up straighter in his bed. The effort leaves him breathing hard, but his voice grows stronger, more certain. "That is where you are wrong, Jon Snow. You are no bastard. You are the true-born son of Prince Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna Stark. You are Aegon Targaryen, rightful heir to the Iron Throne." The words hit Jon like a physical blow. The chamber seems to spin around him, the firelight blurring as he struggles to comprehend what he has just heard. His mouth opens and closes, but no sound emerges. I know what you're thinking, Aemon continues, his blind eyes seeming to look directly into Jon's soul. It cannot be true. It is impossible. But I have suspected, since the day you first arrived at Castle Black. You have the look of a Targaryen, Jon. The same dark hair and grey eyes as your mother, yes. But the bone structure of your father. You are the very image of Rhaegar at your age. Jon finally finds his voice, though it comes out as barely more than a croak. But Lord Stark is my father. He told me so himself. Lord Stark is indeed your father in all the ways that truly matter. He raised you, loved you, protected you. But he is not the man who sired you. Aemon's voice grows gentler now, filled with understanding. Ned Stark made a promise to your dying mother. He promised to protect you from Robert Baratheon's wrath, to keep you safe from those who would kill you for the dragon's blood in your veins. The room falls silent, except for the crackling of the fire and Jon's ragged breathing. Everything he thought he knew about himself, about his place in the world, crumbles away like sand through his fingers. The Tower of Joy, Aemon whispers. That is where your mother died, giving birth to you. Lyanna Stark and Rhaegar Targaryen were wed in secret before the gods, making you no bastard, but a true-born prince. Your father died on the Trident, your mother in childbed, but you lived. You survived because of Ned Stark's love and protection. Jon stands abruptly, the chair scraping against the stone floor. He begins to pace the small chamber, his hands running through his dark hair as he tries to process this revelation. This is madness. You're fevered, ill. You don't know what you're saying. I am old, boy, but I am not addled. I have had years to piece together the truth, to understand the signs that were always there. Your age, your parentage, the timing of your arrival at Winterfell. Lord Stark has protected you well, but he could not hide everything from eyes that know how to look. Aemon struggles to his feet, moving slowly to a chest in the corner of the room. He fumbles with the latch before withdrawing a small object wrapped in black silk. With careful steps, he returns to Jon and places the bundle in the young man's trembling hands. This belonged to your father, Prince Rhaegar. I kept it all these years, waiting for the right moment to pass it on. Jon unwraps the silk with shaking fingers, revealing a small silver ring bearing the three-headed dragon of House Targaryen. The metal seems to glow in the firelight, ancient and beautiful and terrible all at once. Why are you telling me this? Jon asks, his voice breaking. Why now? Because you have a choice to make, Jon Snow. Or should I say, Aegon Targaryen. You can remain here at the Wall, serve out your days as a man of the Night's Watch, and let the truth die with me. Or you can claim your birthright and take your place as the rightful king of the Seven Kingdoms. Jon stares down at the ring in his palm, feeling its weight far beyond its physical mass. I don't want to be king. I never wanted to be anything more than what I am. What you are is the blood of the dragon, the last hope of House Targaryen. The realm bleeds under Robert Baratheon's rule. Perhaps it is time for a true king to sit the Iron Throne once more. The old Maester returns to his bed, suddenly looking every one of his 100 years. The effort of revelation has drained him, but his voice remains steady and clear. I will not force this burden upon you, Jon. The choice is yours alone to make. But know this, you are not alone in this world. You have family, a heritage, a destiny that extends far beyond these walls. Jon closes his fist around the ring, feeling its edges press into his palm. When he looks up, Maester Aemon is watching him with those sightless eyes that somehow see everything. What do I do with this knowledge? For now, you guard it well. Trust no one with this secret until you decide what path you wish to walk. But remember, Jon Snow, or Aegon Targaryen, the truth has a way of revealing itself, no matter how deeply it is buried. Jon nods, though he knows Aemon cannot see the gesture. He wraps the ring carefully in its silk shroud and tucks it inside his doublet, close to his heart. The weight of it seems to grow heavier with each passing moment. Get some rest, Maester. We can speak more of this tomorrow. Yes, Aemon murmurs, settling back into his pillows. Tomorrow. Though I suspect tomorrow will bring changes neither of us can foresee. Jon leaves the chamber in silence, closing the door softly behind him. The corridors of Castle Black seem different now, more menacing somehow, as if the very stones know what secrets he carries. He walks slowly toward his own quarters, his mind reeling with questions and implications he cannot begin to fathom. At the end of the hallway, he pauses before a narrow window that looks out over the wall. The ancient ice stretches away into the darkness, 700 feet of frozen protection between the realm of men and the wild lands beyond. But tonight, it seems less like protection and more like a prison, a barrier keeping him from a world where he might be more than just a bastard of Winterfell. Jon Snow places his hand over his heart, feeling the ring's shape through the fabric of his doublet. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howls, long and mournful in the night. The sound echoes off the wall and fades into silence, leaving Jon alone with the terrible knowledge that nothing in his life will ever be the same again. Chapter 2. The weight of truth. Jon Snow stares at the ceiling of his small chamber, the darkness pressing down on him like a physical weight. 3 days have passed since Maester Aemon's revelation, and sleep refuses to come. Every time he closes his eyes, he sees the old man's face, hears those impossible words echoing in his mind. You are Aegon Targaryen, rightful heir to the Iron Throne. The silver ring lies hidden beneath his mattress, wrapped in its black silk shroud. Jon has taken it out twice since that night, holding it up to the candlelight, trying to make sense of what it means. Each time, the three-headed dragon seems to mock him with its ancient glory. A bastard from Winterfell does not become a prince overnight. Yet Aemon's words carry the weight of absolute certainty, and Jon finds himself believing despite every rational thought in his head. The morning bell tolls across Castle Black, calling the brothers to break their fast. Jon rises slowly, his body stiff from another sleepless night. He dresses in his black wool doublet and breeches, the same clothes he has worn for a year. But somehow they feel different now. Everything feels different. In the common hall, Jon takes his usual place beside Sam Tarly, his closest friend among the brothers. Sam is already halfway through a bowl of porridge, his round face flushed from the morning cold. He looks up as Jon sits down, and his cheerful expression immediately shifts to concern. Jon, you look terrible. Are you ill? Jon forces a smile and reaches for the bread. Just tired. I've been helping Maester Aemon during the nights. His fever broke yesterday, but he's still weak. That's good news about the Maester, Sam says, but his eyes remain worried. You've been different these past few days. Distracted. Is everything well? Jon tears off a piece of bread, though he has no appetite. How can he explain that everything he thought he knew about himself has crumbled to dust? That the name he has carried his entire life might be a lie? I'm fine, Sam. Just tired. But Sam Tarly is not easily fooled. He has known Jon long enough to recognize when his friend is troubled. Throughout the morning meal, Jon catches Sam watching him with those intelligent brown eyes, cataloguing every sign of distress. After breakfast, The brothers disperse to their duties. Jon should report to the kennels to tend the hounds, but instead he finds himself walking toward the practice yard. Perhaps physical exertion will quiet the voices in his head. Sir Alistair Thorne stands in the centre of the yard, his weathered face set in its perpetual scowl. Several of the newer recruits practice with wooden swords under his watchful eye, their movements clumsy and uncoordinated. "Snow!" Thorne's voice cuts across the yard like a blade. "How generous of you to grace us with your presence. I was beginning to think you'd grown too proud for sword practice." Jon picks up a practice sword from the rack and tests its weight. The familiar grip should comfort him, but today even this simple pleasure feels hollow. "I'm ready, Sir Alistair." Thorne selects his own blade and circles Jon with predatory grace. "Are you? You've seemed rather distracted lately. Perhaps your mind is on loftier things than the Night's Watch." The words hit closer to truth than Jon cares to admit. He raises his sword and settles into a defensive stance, trying to focus on the here and now. The first exchange is brief and brutal. Thorne's blade slips past Jon's guard and strikes his ribs with enough force to leave a bruise. Jon staggers back, cursing under his breath. "Where is your mind, Snow? Certainly not on your sword work." Thorne advances again, his blade whistling through the air. "Perhaps you're dreaming of warmer beds and softer company." Jon parries desperately, but his movements are sluggish, unfocused. Another strike gets through, this one catching him across the shoulder. The watching recruits murmur among themselves, surprised to see Jon Snow handled so easily. "Pathetic," Thorne sneers, lowering his sword. "When you decide to rejoin us in reality, Snow, let me know. Until then, you're dismissed." Jon sheathes his practice sword with burning cheeks. The humiliation stings worse than the bruises, but he cannot deny that Thorne is right. His mind is elsewhere, lost in questions that have no easy answers. He finds Sam later that afternoon in the library, surrounded by towers of books and scrolls. The room is warm and quiet, lit by oil lamps that cast golden circles of light across the ancient texts. Sam looks up as Jon enters, his face brightening with relief. "There you are. I was hoping you'd come here." Jon settles into a chair across from his friend, noting the particular books Sam has selected. Histories of the 7 kingdoms, genealogies of the great houses, chronicles of kings and princes long dead. "Doing research?" Jon asks carefully. Sam's cheeks flush pink. "I've been thinking about our conversation this morning. You said you weren't well, but I think there's more to it than that. You've been acting strangely ever since Maester Aemon fell ill." Jon's heart begins to race. Has Sam somehow guessed the truth? Is his turmoil so obvious that even his gentle friend can see through his pretense? "Sam, I think the Maester told you something," Sam continues, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Something important. Something that's been eating at you for days." Jon stares at his friend, weighing his options. The burden of Aemon's secret grows heavier with each passing hour, and the need to share it with someone he trusts becomes almost overwhelming. Sam is loyal, trustworthy, and intelligent enough to understand the implications. "If I tell you something," Jon says slowly, "will you swear to keep it secret? No matter how impossible it might sound?" Sam's eyes widen, but he nods without hesitation. "Of course, Jon. You can trust me with anything." Jon takes a deep breath and leans forward in his chair. "Maester Aemon told me something about my parentage, about who I really am." For the next hour, Jon recounts every word of Aemon's revelation. He describes the ring, the claims about Rhaegar and Lyanna, the suggestion that he might be the rightful king of the 7 kingdoms. Sam listens in stunned silence, his face growing paler with each passing minute. When John finishes, Sam sits back in his chair and stares at the ceiling. "By the 7, he whispers. "John, if this is true—" "I know what it means," John says grimly. "But is it true? How can we be certain that Eamon isn't mistaken, that age and illness haven't clouded his judgment?" Sam reaches for one of the books on the table, a thick volume titled The Lives of 4 Kings. His fingers flip through the pages until he finds what he's looking for. "Prince Rhaegar Targaryen," he reads aloud. "Born in 259, died in 283 during Robert's Rebellion. Married to Princess Elia Martell of Dorne, with whom he had 2 children, Rhaenys and Aegon." Sam looks up at John. "There's no mention of a second Aegon." "Because no one knows about it," John says. "That was the point of Lord Stark's deception." Sam turns several more pages, his scholarly mind working through the implications. "The timing works," he admits reluctantly. "Robert's rebellion ended in 283. You would have been born near the end of the war, which matches what the Maester told you." John pulls the wrapped ring from inside his doublet and places it on the table between them. Sam's intake of breath is audible in the quiet library. "May I?" Sam asks. John nods, and Sam carefully unwraps the ring. The silver gleams in the lamplight, and the 3-headed dragon seems to writhe in the flickering shadows. Sam turns it over in his hands, examining every detail. "This is authentic," he says finally. "Balerion silver, worked in the old style. This ring is at least 3 centuries old, possibly older." He looks up at John with wide eyes. "Where would Maester Aemon get something like this, unless it really belonged to Prince Rhaegar?" John finishes. "Sam, what am I supposed to do with this knowledge? I never wanted to be anything more than a man of the Night's Watch." Sam wraps the ring again and pushes it back across the table. "I don't know, John. But I do know that secrets like this have a way of coming to light, whether we want them to or not." As if summoned by Sam's words, voices drift through the library window from the courtyard below. John and Sam exchange glances and move to peer through the thick glass. In the yard below, 2 stewards are sharing a wineskin, their voices loud with drink despite the early hour. One of them, a thin man named Kedge, gestures wildly as he speaks. "I'm telling you, Fulk, something's going on with that boy. Snow's been acting queer ever since the old master took sick, walking around like he's seen a ghost." "Maybe he has," his companion replies with a drunken laugh. "Castle Black's full of ghosts, or hadn't you heard?" "No, this is different. I heard him talking to himself yesterday, muttering about dragons and kings and such nonsense. Mark my words, something's addled his brain." John's blood turns to ice. He has no memory of talking to himself, but the stress of the past few days might have loosened his tongue without his knowledge. "Dragons and kings?" Fulk laughs again. "Maybe Snow thinks he's a prince. Wouldn't that be rich? The bastard of Winterfell, dreaming of crowns." Their laughter echoes across the courtyard, but it cuts off abruptly as another figure approaches. John recognizes the stocky form of Janos Slynt, the former commander of the City Watch, who was exiled to the Wall by Tyrion Lannister. "What's this about dragons and kings?" Slynt asks, his voice carrying clearly in the cold air. The 2 stewards sober quickly under Slynt's calculating gaze. "Nothing, my lord," Kedge stammers. "Just drunk talk, nothing more." But Slynt's expression remains sharp and interested. "I think there's more to it than that. Tell me what you heard." John grips the window ledge so hard his knuckles turn white. He watches in growing horror as the stewards reluctantly repeat their observations about his strange behavior. Slint listens with the attention of a man who understands the value of information. "Interesting," Slint murmurs when they finish. "Very interesting indeed. You two keep your ears open and report anything else you hear. There might be a reward in it for you." The stewards nod eagerly and hurry away, leaving Slint alone in the courtyard. He stands there for a long moment, his eyes thoughtful and calculating. Then he too disappears, heading toward the administrative chambers where ravens carry messages across the 7 kingdoms. Jon sinks back into his chair, his worst fears confirmed. The secret is already beginning to spread, passed along by loose tongues and idle speculation, and now Janos Slint, a man with connections to the highest levels of power in King's Landing, has taken an interest. "Jon," Sam whispers, his face pale with understanding, "we have to warn Meister Aemon. If Slint sends word south—" Jon nods grimly. The game has begun, whether he wanted it to or not. The secret that was meant to stay buried in the frozen north is already clawing its way toward the light. That evening, as Jon lies sleepless in his bed once more, he hears the sound of wings outside his window. A raven launches itself into the night sky, carrying its message south toward King's Landing. In his chamber across the castle, Janos Slint smiles as he watches the bird disappear into the darkness. The weight of truth, Jon realizes, is nothing compared to the weight of consequences, and those consequences are now winging their way toward the capital, where kings and queens play their games of power. He reaches beneath his mattress and touches the wrapped ring, feeling its shape through the silk. Soon, he knows, hiding will no longer be an option. The dragon's blood in his veins burns with the knowledge that everything is about to change. Chapter 3. Ravens and Whispers. The raven arrives at King's Landing in the grey hours before dawn, its black wings cutting through the morning mist that rises from the Blackwater rush. The bird settles on the rookery of the Red Keep with a harsh cry, one leg bearing a small scroll sealed with black wax. The ravens from the wall always carry urgent messages, but this one will reshape the very foundations of the 7 kingdoms. Grandmaster Pycelle retrieves the message with arthritic fingers, squinting at the cramped handwriting in the pale light. His eyes widen as he reads, and he nearly drops the parchment in his shock. The contents are impossible, treasonous, and utterly compelling in their implications. But Pycelle is not the only one to read Janos Slint's words. Queen Cersei Lannister has cultivated her own network of informants throughout the Red Keep, and one of them intercepts the message before it reaches the king. The servant, a thin-faced boy named Willem, brings the scroll directly to the Queen's chambers as the first light of dawn breaks over the capital. Cersei sits at her dressing table, golden hair cascading over her shoulders as her handmaiden works to arrange it into an elaborate style. She reads Slint's letter twice, her emerald eyes growing brighter with each word. A slow smile spreads across her beautiful face, the kind of expression that has preceded the downfall of many enemies. "Leave me," she commands her handmaiden, who bows and exits quickly. Cersei rises from her chair and moves to the window that overlooks the city below. Somewhere to the north, beyond the hills and rivers, a bastard boy carries dragon's blood in his veins. The knowledge should terrify her, but instead it fills her with a fierce satisfaction. "Jon Snow," she whispers to the morning air. Or should I say, Aegon Targaryen. The irony is delicious. For years she has lived in fear of Targaryen restoration, of dragons returning to reclaim their stolen throne. She has supported Robert's paranoid hunts for any remnant of the dragon line, knowing that her own children's legitimacy depends on keeping Targaryen pretenders from the realm. And now, the greatest threat of all has been hiding in plain sight at the wall. But this threat also presents an opportunity. Robert has been restless lately, drinking more heavily, spending more time hunting and less time ruling. The lords whisper that he grows bored with kingship, that he yearns for the simplicity of war over the complexities of peace. If Cersei can present him with a clear enemy, a Targaryen pretender to crush, she might rekindle the warrior's fire that once made her husband formidable. More importantly, she can ensure that this particular Targaryen never lives to press his claim. Cersei moves to her writing desk and begins composing orders with swift, decisive strokes. The king is hunting in the Kingswood and will not return for several days, giving her precious time to act before Robert's unpredictable nature can complicate matters. She writes first to Sir Meryn Trant, commanding him to take a company of gold cloaks north to Castle Black, with orders to arrest the traitor Jon Snow on charges of high treason. The second letter goes to Lord Tywin Lannister at Casterly Rock, informing her father of this unexpected development. Tywin's response will be crucial. His strategic mind and resources could prove invaluable in handling the political fallout that is sure to follow. As Cersei seals the letters with her personal ring, she reflects on the delicious irony of the situation. Janos Slynt, whom Tyrion exiled to the wall in a fit of spite, has potentially delivered the greatest gift imaginable to House Lannister. She makes a mental note to reward the man handsomely once this business is concluded. Meanwhile, in the Tower of the Hand, Peter Baelish receives his own copy of Slynt's message through channels that even Cersei does not suspect. Littlefinger reads the contents with growing interest, his clever mind immediately grasping the implications for the Game of Thrones. A living Targaryen heir changes everything. The political calculations that have governed the realm for nearly 2 decades suddenly become obsolete. New alliances will form, old loyalties will be tested, and chaos will reign as various factions choose their sides. Littlefinger considers his options carefully. He could support Cersei's plan to eliminate the boy quickly and quietly, maintaining the status quo that has served him well. Or he could play a more complex game, one that might ultimately place him in a position of even greater power. He thinks of Catelyn Tully, now Catelyn Stark, sitting in her solar at Winterfell. She has no love for her husband's bastard, but she would not stand idle while an innocent boy is murdered for political convenience. And if that boy truly carries royal blood, if he is indeed the son of Lyanna Stark? Littlefinger smiles and reaches for his own quill. The game is about to become far more interesting. At Castle Black, the morning brings no peace to Jon Snow. He wakes from another fitful sleep to find Sam Tarly shaking his shoulder. The young man's face pale with worry. "Jon, you need to come quickly. The old bear wants to see you in his chambers. Now." Jon dresses hurriedly and follows Sam through the corridors of Castle Black. The other brothers they pass watch him with curious eyes, and Jon realizes that whatever privacy he once enjoyed has been thoroughly destroyed. The whispers have spread, just as he feared they would. Lord Commander Jorah Mormont's chambers are Spartan, but comfortable, warmed by a fire that crackles in the stone hearth. The old bear sits behind his desk, his weathered face grave as he studies a piece of parchment. His raven perches nearby, occasionally croaking "corn" in a voice that seems to mock the severity of the moment. "Sit down, Jon," Mormont says without looking up. "We need to talk." Jon takes the offered chair, his hands clasped tightly in his lap. He has been dreading this conversation since Slynt's letter flew south, knowing that it was only a matter of time before the rumors reached his Lord Commander's ears. Mormont finally raises his eyes, and Jon is surprised by the compassion he sees there. This is not the look of a man preparing to pass judgment, but rather someone faced with an impossible situation. "I've been hearing strange stories about you, lad. stories that would be laughable if they weren't being told with such conviction by men I trust. Mormont leans back in his chair. Tell me true, Jon Snow. Is there something you need to confess? The moment of truth has arrived. Jon could deny everything, dismiss the rumors as the ravings of bored men with too much time and too little wine. But looking into Mormont's honest eyes, he finds he cannot lie to the man who has been more of a father to him than anyone save Ned Stark. Yes, my lord, Jon says quietly. There is. For the next hour, Jon repeats the story Maester Aemon told him, watching Mormont's expression shift from skepticism to amazement to grim understanding. When Jon finishes, the Lord Commander sits in silence for a long moment, his fingers drumming against the desk. By the old gods and the new, Mormont finally whispers, if this is true, Jon, you're the rightful king of the Seven Kingdoms. I never asked for a crown, my lord. I came here to serve the Night's Watch, to take the black and forget about claims and birthrights. Mormont nods slowly. I believe you, lad. But what you want, and what the realm needs, may be very different things. He stands and moves to the window, staring out at the wall that has defined both their lives. The question now is what we do about it. What do you mean? Word has reached King's Landing, Jon. Janos Slynt sent a letter south the night after those drunken fools were overheard, talking about dragons and kings. By now, every major lord in the Seven Kingdoms knows or soon will know about your parentage. Jon's blood turns to ice. What will they do? Mormont turns from the window, his face hard with resolve. Robert Baratheon will want you dead. Cersei Lannister will want you dead. Most of the great houses will see you as a threat to the stability they've enjoyed under Baratheon rule. He pauses. But others will see you as hope for a better future. My lord, I don't want— What you want no longer matters, Mormont interrupts, not unkindly. You are who you are, Jon Snow, or should I say, Aegon Targaryen. That blood in your veins makes you a target, whether you claim a crown or not. The Lord Commander moves to a cabinet and withdraws a small key. He unlocks a drawer and removes a letter bearing the Stark direwolf seal. This arrived by Raven an hour ago, sent by Petter Baelish in King's Landing. It's addressed to your father, your true father in all the ways that matter. Ned Stark. Mormont hands Jon the letter. He warns that royal forces are already mobilizing to march north. You have perhaps a fortnight before they arrive at our gates. Jon breaks the seal with trembling fingers and reads Littlefinger's warning. The words are carefully chosen, revealing just enough to convey the danger without explicitly stating treasonous facts. But the message is clear. Flee now, or die when the gold cloaks arrive. What do I do? Jon asks, his voice barely above a whisper. Mormont clasps Jon's shoulder with a fatherly hand. You survive, lad. Whatever else happens, you survive. The realm may have need of you yet. Outside the Lord Commander's chambers, the castle buzzes with activity as ravens launch themselves into the grey sky. Messages fly north to Winterfell, south to King's Landing, east to the great houses that will soon be forced to choose sides in a conflict they never saw coming. In King's Landing, Queen Cersei watches from her window as Sir Meryn Trant rides out at the head of a column of gold cloaks, their armor gleaming in the morning sun. Soon, she tells herself, the last Targaryen will be dead and the realm will be safe once more. But in the frozen north, other forces are already stirring. The Game of Thrones has begun anew, and this time the stakes are nothing less than the future of the Seven Kingdoms. Jon Snow looks out at the wall one last time as a simple bastard. When he turns away, It is as a king in exile, whether he wants the title or not. The raven that carries word to Winterfell disappears into the northern sky, bearing news that will shatter the peace Ned Stark has worked so hard to maintain. In the godswood of his ancestral home, among the heart trees that have watched over his family for centuries, Ned will soon learn that the promise he made to his dying sister has become a burden that threatens to destroy everything he holds dear. The secret is a secret no more. The dragon has awakened, and Westeros will never be the same. Chapter 4. The Wolf Lord's Dilemma. The raven arrives at Winterfell as the morning sun breaks over the ancient walls of the castle. Maester Luwin retrieves the message from the rookery with practiced efficiency, his chain of office clinking softly as he climbs down the winding stairs. The seal bears the mockingbird of House Baelish, and the urgency of its flight suggests news that cannot wait for proper channels. Luwin finds Lord Ned Stark in the godswood, kneeling before the heart tree, as he does each morning. The ancient weirwood's red leaves flutter in the cold breeze, and its carved face seems to watch with knowing eyes as the Maester approaches. Ned's lips move silently in prayer, but his words are interrupted by the soft footfall behind him. "My lord," Luwin says quietly. "A raven from King's Landing. The matter appears urgent." Ned rises from his knees, brushing dirt from his leather breeches. He takes the message without comment and breaks the seal with careful fingers. As his eyes scan Littlefinger's carefully worded warning, his face grows pale as winter snow. "My lord?" Luwin asks, noting the change in his lord's expression. "Is all well?" Ned reads the letter twice, his mind racing through the implications of every word. Petter Baelish writes of political storms gathering around a certain bastard of Winterfell, of royal forces mobilizing northward, of secrets that threaten to tear the Seven Kingdoms apart. The message is carefully crafted to avoid explicit treason, but its meaning is unmistakable to the man who has carried this burden for 18 years. "Summon my lady wife," Ned says, his voice steady despite the turmoil in his chest. "Tell her to come to my solar immediately, and have Sir Roderick attend me as well." Luwin nods and hurries away, his curiosity evident but unspoken. Ned remains in the godswood for a moment longer, staring up at the heart tree's ancient face. The old gods have watched over his family for centuries, but even they cannot protect against the sins of the past coming to light. By the time Ned reaches his solar, Catelyn is already waiting. She sits by the fire, her auburn hair gleaming in the morning light, but her blue eyes are filled with concern. 18 years of marriage have taught her to read her husband's moods, and she recognizes the weight of terrible news in his bearing. "What is it?" she asks without preamble. "What has happened?" Ned closes the door behind him and moves to his desk. The letter from Littlefinger lies before him like an accusation, its words burning in his memory. For nearly 2 decades, he has dreaded this moment, knowing that someday the truth would surface despite his best efforts to bury it. "It concerns Jon," he says finally. Catelyn's expression hardens immediately. Even after all these years, the mention of her husband's bastard can still stir resentment in her heart. What has the boy done now? More fights with the Master-at-Arms? No, Cat, it's not what he's done. It's what he is. Ned takes a deep breath, steeling himself for the conversation that will change everything between them. "Jon is not my son." The words hang in the air like a blade waiting to fall. Catelyn stares at her husband in shock, her mind struggling to process what she has just heard. "Not your son?" "But you said, you told me." "I lied." The admission comes out as barely more than a whisper. "I have lied to you, to our children, to the entire realm for 18 years. Ned moves to the window that overlooks the courtyard below. In the distance, he can see the spot where Jon took his first steps, where he learned to hold a sword, where he grew from a frightened infant into the young man who now faces death for the circumstances of his birth. Then whose son is he? Catelyn's voice is steady, but Ned can hear the hurt beneath her calm exterior. He is the son of my sister Lyanna and Prince Rhaegar Targaryen. His true name is Aegon, and he is the rightful heir to the Iron Throne. The revelation hits Catelyn like a physical blow. She grips the arms of her chair, her knuckles white with tension. Everything she thought she knew about her marriage, about the boy she has resented for so many years, crumbles in an instant. "The Tower of Joy," she whispers. "When you went to find Lyanna. She was dying in childbed when I arrived. She made me promise to protect her son, to keep him safe from Robert's wrath. So I brought him home and claimed him as my own bastard." Ned's voice breaks slightly. "I couldn't tell you the truth, Cat. I couldn't risk Robert discovering it. He would have killed Jon without hesitation." Catelyn rises from her chair and moves to stand beside her husband at the window. For a long moment, they watch the courtyard in silence, both lost in the implications of this revelation. "And now?" she asks. "Now the secret is out. Word has reached King's Landing, and Queen Cersei has dispatched soldiers north to arrest Jon. They mean to kill him, Cat. They mean to kill the boy I raised as my own son." The transformation in Catelyn's expression is immediate and profound. The resentment she has carried for 18 years melts away, replaced by something fiercer and more protective. Whatever Jon's parentage, he is family now in a way she never allowed herself to acknowledge before. "Then we must protect him," she says firmly. "He is your sister's son. He is our nephew." Ned nods, relief flooding through him at his wife's acceptance. "I've already sent word to call the banners. Our men will march north to the wall within the fortnight." A knock at the door interrupts their conversation. Sir Roderick Castle enters, his white whiskers bristling with curiosity. Behind him come Robb and Sansa, both looking concerned by their parents' urgent summons. "You sent for us, father?" Robb asks, his young face serious beyond his 16 years. Ned looks at his eldest son, seeing so much of himself in the boy's steady gaze. Robb is nearly a man grown, old enough to understand the weight of what he is about to learn. Sansa, at 13, still carries much of childhood's innocence in her bright blue eyes. "Sit down, both of you. What I'm about to tell you will change everything you thought you knew about our family." For the next hour, Ned repeats the story of Jon's true parentage, watching his children's faces shift through confusion, amazement, and finally acceptance. Robb takes the news with the measured thoughtfulness that marks him as a future lord. Sansa's reaction is more emotional, her romantic nature seized by the drama of secret royal blood and hidden identities. "Jon is a prince," Sansa breathes, her eyes wide with wonder. "A true prince, like in the songs?" "He is," Ned confirms, "but that makes him more dangerous to the crown than any enemy army. Kings do not suffer rivals to live." Robb stands and begins pacing the solar, his mind already working through the tactical implications. "How many men can we raise? How quickly can we march?" "The Umbers can have 500 men ready within days," Sir Roderick offers. "The Karstarks and Mormonts will need more time, but we can count on their loyalty." "And Arya?" Sansa asks suddenly. "Where is she? Shouldn't she know about Jon?" As if summoned by her name, the door bursts open to reveal Arya Stark, her dark hair dishevelled and her plain brown dress stained with mud. She has clearly been listening at the keyhole, a habit that drives her sceptre to distraction, but serves her well in moments like this. "Is it true?" she demands, her grey eyes flashing with fierce emotion. "Is Jon really a prince?" "Arya, you shouldn't," Sansa begins, but their father cuts her off. "Yes," Ned says simply. "It's true." Arya's reaction is immediate and passionate. "Then we have to save him. We can't let them hurt Jon." "We will, little one," Catelyn says, reaching out to smooth her daughter's wild hair. "We're going to bring him home." The family conference continues as the morning wears on. Plans are made, ravens are sent, and preparations begin for what may become the most important military campaign in the North's recent history. Bran and Rickon are kept away from these discussions, their youth deemed too great a risk for such dangerous knowledge. As the sun reaches its zenith, Ned stands once again at his window, watching the controlled chaos in the courtyard below. Servants scurry about, preparing supplies, while stable hands ready horses for the journeys ahead. The machinery of war is beginning to turn, all for the sake of a bastard boy who never asked to be born into such complexity. Maester Luwin appears at his elbow, a freshly written letter in his hands. "Your message to Lord Arryn is ready, my lord. The Raven will reach King's Landing within 3 days." Ned takes the letter, his last hope for a peaceful resolution to this crisis. Jon Arryn has been a father figure to him since childhood, a man of honor and wisdom who might find a way to protect Jon without resorting to war. If anyone can navigate the treacherous politics of the capital and keep Robert's rage in check, it is the hand of the king. "Send it," Ned says. "But prepare for the possibility that honor and wisdom may not be enough this time." As afternoon fades to evening, the first snowflakes begin to fall on Winterfell's ancient stones. The sight fills Ned with both melancholy and determination. Winter has always been the North's strength, the force that protects them when southern armies grow too ambitious. Catelyn finds him on the walls as darkness settles over the castle. She wraps her cloak tighter against the cold and stands beside her husband, watching the snow gather in the courtyard below. "Do you think we can save him?" she asks quietly. Ned considers the question carefully. The forces arrayed against Jon are formidable. The Crown's authority, the Lannister gold, the fear of Targaryen restoration that drives so many lords to support the status quo. But the North has never bowed easily to southern tyranny, and Jon carries more than royal blood in his veins. He carries the love and loyalty of the family that raised him. "We have to try," Ned says finally. "I made a promise to Lyanna as she lay dying. I swore to protect her son, and I will not break that vow now." In the distance, a horn sounds from the gates of Winterfell. The first of the bannermen have arrived, their horses steaming in the cold air as they ride into the courtyard. The Umber giant strides across his battle standard, while the Mormont bear growls from its field of green. The North is rising, and soon its armies will march toward the wall. Whether they march to save a bastard boy or a rightful king remains to be seen, but they will march nonetheless. Jon Snow may have taken the Black and sworn to father no children, hold no lands, and win no glory. But he is still a Stark in all the ways that matter, and the wolves protect their own. The snow continues to fall as Ned Stark prepares for war, each flake a reminder that winter is coming for everyone who threatens his family. And in the frozen lands beyond the wall, another kind of storm is brewing, one that will test every oath and challenge every loyalty before the game is through. Chapter 5. The Stag King's Fury. The hunting party returns to King's Landing as the afternoon sun casts long shadows across the Red Keep's ancient walls. King Robert Baratheon rides at their head, his massive frame swaying in the saddle as his destrier picks its way through the cobblestone streets. The hunt has been good. 3 boars lie strapped to pack horses behind him, their blood still fresh on his favourite spear. Robert's mood is jovial as he dismounts in the castle courtyard. The thrill of the chase still courses through his veins, and he looks forward to an evening of wine and stories with his companions. The cares of kingship seem distant when he holds a spear in his hands instead of a crown on his head. But his good humour evaporates the moment he sees Queen Cersei waiting for him at the entrance to the throne room. Her green eyes glitter with barely contained excitement, and her smile holds the kind of satisfaction that usually precedes someone's downfall. In her delicate hands, she holds a rolled parchment sealed with black wax. "My king," she purrs, approaching with the fluid grace of a lioness stalking prey. "I trust your hunt was successful." Robert eyes the parchment with growing suspicion. 20 years of marriage have taught him to recognize when his wife is plotting something, and the signs are unmistakable tonight. "Successful enough," he grunts, wiping boar's blood from his hands with a cloth. "What's that you're holding, woman? More complaints from the Septons about the royal expenditures?" Cersei's smile widens, revealing perfect white teeth that somehow seem predatory in the torchlight. "Nothing so mundane, my lord. This concerns a matter far more pressing to the security of your reign." She holds out the parchment, and Robert takes it with thick fingers, still stained from the day's killing. As his eyes scan the contents of Janos Slint's letter, his expression transforms from curiosity to shock to volcanic rage. "What is this?" Robert roars, his voice echoing off the stone walls of the courtyard. "What madness is this?" "It's the truth, Robert. The truth about the bastard you've allowed to live under your very nose for 18 years. Cersei steps closer, her voice dropping to a whisper that carries more venom than any shout. "Jon Snow is no bastard. He is Aegon Targaryen, the son of your precious Lyanna and that dragon prince who stole her away." The parchment crumples in Robert's fist as his face turns the colour of blood. For a moment, he cannot speak, cannot breathe, cannot think beyond the red haze that descends over his vision. The boy he has dismissed as Ned's indiscretion, the bastard he has ignored for nearly 2 decades, carries the blood of the family he has spent his reign trying to erase from history. "Impossible," he whispers. But even as he speaks the word, he knows it is true. The timing fits perfectly, and it explains so much about Ned's behavior over the years. His friend's reluctance to speak of Jon's mother, his fierce protectiveness of the boy, his refusal to bring the bastard to court. "Where is Ned?" Robert demands, his voice building to another roar. "Where is that lying, treacherous wolf?" "Still at Winterfell, my king. But I suspect he knows by now that his secret has been exposed. Our sources suggest he may already be mobilizing his forces." Robert's rage explodes like a dam bursting. He hurls the crumpled letter across the courtyard and draws his war hammer from his belt, the massive weapon seeming almost light in his enormous hands. "Guards!" he bellows. "Summon the small council, now!" Within the hour, the most powerful men in the 7 kingdoms gather in the small council chamber. Lord Jon Arryn sits at the head of the table, his weathered face grave, as he studies the letter that has thrown the realm into crisis. To his right, Grand Maester Pycelle adjusts his heavy chain nervously, while Varys the Spider sits perfectly still, his soft hands folded in his lap. Littlefinger occupies his usual seat near the window, his expression carefully neutral, despite the chaos he has helped to orchestrate. Across from him, Renly Baratheon fidgets with his rings, clearly uncomfortable with the tension that fills the room like smoke from a funeral pyre. Robert paces behind his chair like a caged lion, his war hammer never far from his hands. Each step echoes in the chamber, a drumbeat of barely contained violence that makes even seasoned courtiers nervous. 18 years, Robert snarls, his dark eyes fixed on some invisible enemy. 18 years that bastard has lived and breathed, while I thought all the dragon spawn were dead and buried. 18 years Ned Stark has made a fool of me. Your Grace, Jon Arryn begins carefully. We must consider this matter with clear heads. Young Jon Snow has done nothing to— Nothing! Robert's roar shakes the windows in their frames. He exists. He draws breath. He carries the blood of Aerys, the Mad King, and that rapist prince who destroyed everything I ever loved. The king's massive fist crashes down on the table, sending inkwells and parchments flying. That is crime enough. Lord Arryn tries again, his voice steady, despite the storm raging before him. Robert, think. The boy took the black. He has sworn vows that remove him from the Game of Thrones forever. He poses no threat to your rule. The Night's Watch has released men from their vows before, Pycelle interjects, his chain rattling as he speaks. In times of great need, exceptions have been made. The precedent exists. Varys clears his throat delicately. Might I suggest, Your Grace, that hasty action could create more problems than it solves? The boy has supporters, particularly in the north. Moving against him could what? Robert whirls on the eunuch, his face twisted with fury. Could start a war? Good. Let them come. Let every Targaryen loyalist crawl out of whatever hole they've been hiding in, and I'll crush them all. Renly shifts uncomfortably in his seat. Brother, perhaps we should consider— I'll hear no more debate. Robert's voice cuts through the chamber like a blade. The decision is made. Ser Ilyn. The royal executioner steps forward from his position by the door, his pale face expressionless as always. Ser Ilyn Payne has not spoken since the Mad King cut out his tongue decades ago, but his presence alone is enough to convey Robert's intentions. Take a full company of guards and ride for the wall. Bring me the head of Jon Snow. I want proof that the last Targaryen dragon is dead before the moon turns. Your Grace, Littlefinger speaks for the first time, his voice smooth as silk. What of Lord Stark? Surely he should be given a chance to explain his actions. Robert's laugh is harsh and bitter. Explain? What explanation could justify harboring a Targaryen pretender for 18 years? No, Ned Stark has chosen his side, and it is not mine. The king moves to his chair and settles his bulk into it, the wood creaking under his weight. When he speaks again, his voice carries the absolute authority of a king passing judgment. By royal decree, I strip House Stark of the wardenship of the North. Let it pass to House Bolton, who have always been loyal to the Iron Throne. As for Ned Stark himself, he is declared traitor to the realm. Any man who aids him shares his fate. The pronouncement falls over the chamber like a funeral shroud. Even Pycelle looks shocked at the severity of the king's judgment. Jon Arryn's face has gone pale as parchment, and his hands tremble slightly as he processes what he has just heard. Robert, Arryn says quietly, you cannot mean this. Ned Stark has been your friend since boyhood. He fought beside you during the rebellion, helped you win the throne. Whatever his reasons for protecting the boy, they came from honor, not treason. Honor? Robert's voice drips with contempt. Is it honorable to lie to your king for 18 years? Is it honorable to protect the enemy of everything we fought to build? He leans forward in his chair, his dark eyes boring into Arryn's. You speak of friendship, but friendship works both ways. Ned chose that Targaryen bastard over me. Lord Arryn opens his mouth to respond, but Robert waves him to silence. The matter is decided. Sir Ilyn rides north at dawn with my orders. Any man who stands in his way dies. As the small council meeting dissolves into uncomfortable silence, ravens begin launching from the Red Keep's rookery. The news of Robert's decree spreads across the Seven Kingdoms like wildfire, reaching every great house and major lord within days. At Dragonstone, Stannis Baratheon receives word of his brother's actions with the grim satisfaction of a man whose suspicions have been proven correct. He has always believed that Robert's reign rests on shaky foundations, and this revelation confirms his worst fears. A living Targaryen heir changes everything, and Stannis begins calculating his own position in the chaos to come. The letter from King's Landing lies open on his desk as he stares out at the smoking sea that surrounds his island fortress. Stannis has never loved his brother, but he has always supported the legitimacy of his rule. Now, faced with proof that a more rightful claimant exists, his duty becomes far more complicated. "Maester Cresson," he calls to his elderly advisor, "summon my captains. If Robert means to start a war over this boy, we must be ready to choose our side carefully." In the throne room of the Red Keep, Robert sits alone on the Iron Throne as twilight falls over the capital. The twisted mass of swords seems to press down on him more heavily than usual, each blade a reminder of the violence that built his reign and the violence that may yet destroy it. He thinks of Lyanna, beautiful and wild and forever beyond his reach. For 18 years, he has mourned her death and blamed Rhaegar Targaryen for stealing her away. But now he knows that she lived long enough to bear the prince's son, that some part of her survives in the boy he has just condemned to death. The irony is bitter beyond measure. In trying to destroy the last Targaryen, he may be destroying the last piece of the woman he loved. But love and kingship rarely align, and Robert Baratheon chose his crown long ago. The great wheels of war begin to turn as night falls over King's Landing. In the north, Ned Stark's banners march toward the wall. From the capital, Sir Ilyn Payne rides with orders to kill, and somewhere between them, the fate of the Seven Kingdoms hangs in the balance. Robert's warhammer rests against the Iron Throne, its steel head gleaming in the torchlight. Soon, he knows, it will taste blood again. The only question is whose blood will be spilled when the storm finally breaks. The Stag King has made his choice, and the realm will burn for it. Chapter 6. Unlikely Alliances. The great Lion of Casterly Rock arrives in King's Landing 3 days after King Robert's explosive decree, his golden banners snapping in the wind as his escort rides through the capital's gates. Lord Tywin Lannister has made the journey from the Westerlands in record time, pushing his horses hard after receiving Cersei's urgent raven. "The Grav, tell me everything," he commands, in the voice that has cowed lords and kings alike. Cersei recounts the past week's events, from Janos Slynt's letter to Robert's volcanic rage to the mobilization of forces throughout the realm. As she speaks, Tywin's expression grows increasingly thoughtful, his mind working through the political implications of each development. "Robert moves like a bull in a pottery shop," Tywin observes when she finishes. Stripping the Starks of their wardenship, sending Sir Ilyn north with execution orders. These are the actions of a man ruled by emotion rather than strategy. "But surely you agree the Targaryen boy must die?" Cersei asks, moving to pour wine for both of them. "We cannot allow any pretender to threaten Joffrey's inheritance." Tywin accepts the goblet, but does not drink immediately. Instead, he stares into the red liquid as if reading prophecies in its depths. "The boy's death may be necessary," he says finally. "But Robert's approach ensures maximum chaos with minimum strategic benefit. We could have eliminated the threat quietly, without triggering a northern uprising or fracturing long-standing alliances. Then what do you propose? We adapt. The situation has moved beyond subtlety, so we must ensure that when the dust settles, House Lannister emerges stronger than ever. Tywin finally takes a sip of wine, his expression calculating. If Robert insists on this war, we will fight it, but we will fight it intelligently. Meanwhile, far to the north, another crucial alliance takes shape in the grey waters off White Harbour. Lord Stannis Baratheon's war galley cuts through the choppy seas, its black and gold sails taut with wind. The Lord of Dragonstone has sailed from his island fortress under cover of darkness, bringing only his most trusted captains to this clandestine meeting. White Harbour's port bustles with activity as merchant ships and fishing boats navigate the crowded waters, but one vessel stands apart from the others, a northern longship flying the direwolf of House Stark. Ned Stark waits aboard with a small escort, his weathered face grave as Stannis' galley approaches. The two lords meet in the cabin of Ned's ship, their retainers standing guard outside. They have not spoken privately in years, their relationship strained by the complexities of court politics and family loyalties. But desperate times demand unlikely alliances. Lord Stark, Stannis says without preamble, his jaw set in its characteristic rigid line. I assume you know why I've come. I can guess, Ned replies, gesturing for Stannis to sit at the small table that dominates the cabin. Your brother's decree has reached every corner of the 7 kingdoms by now. Stannis takes the offered seat, his hands clasped tightly before him. Robert has lost his mind, stripping you of the wardenship over a boy who took the black. It defies all reason and precedent. The boy in question happens to carry Targaryen blood. That changes things considerably. Does it? Stannis' dark eyes bore into Ned's. I've been thinking about this revelation, Lord Stark, about what it means for the legitimacy of my brother's reign. Ned shifts uncomfortably in his chair. He has always found Stannis difficult to read, the younger Baratheon brother's rigid sense of justice both admirable and dangerous. Robert won his crown by right of conquest, Ned says carefully. The Targaryens were defeated, their line broken. But their line wasn't broken, was it? Stannis leans forward, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. This Jon Snow, this Aegon Targaryen, if he truly is the son of Prince Rhaegar, then he has a better claim to the Iron Throne than any of us. The admission hangs between them like a sword waiting to fall. Ned has spent 18 years dreading this moment, when someone would speak aloud the truth that makes Jon not just a threat to Robert's reign, but its rightful replacement. What are you saying, Stannis? I'm saying that I've spent my life serving a king whose crown may not rightfully be his. I've held Dragonstone in trust for the Targaryens, waiting for their return. Stannis' voice grows stronger, more certain. Perhaps that time has come. The political earthquake continues to spread across the 7 kingdoms as ravens carry news of the growing crisis to every major house. In the water gardens of Sunspear, Prince Doran Martell receives word of the northern troubles with the grim satisfaction of a man who has waited 2 decades for his chance at revenge. Doran sits in his wheeled chair beneath the shade of blood-orange trees, their fruit gleaming like rubies in the Dornish sun. His brother Oberyn lounges nearby, his dark eyes glittering with interest as he reads the latest intelligence from their spies in King's Landing. A Targaryen heir, alive and grown, Oberyn muses, setting down the parchment. The gods have a sense of irony, brother. Doran's weathered hands grip the arms of his chair, old pain flaring in his gouty joints. Elia's children were murdered to secure Robert's throne. Now another child threatens to topple it. What would you have me do? The Prince of Dawn stares into the dancing waters of the fountain before him, seeing not dawnish sunshine, but the blood-soaked halls of the Red Keep where his sister and her children died. Take 500 spears and ride north, Doran says quietly. If this boy truly carries Rhaegar's blood, then Dorne owes him protection. And if helping him causes Robert Baratheon pain, he allows himself a thin smile. So much the better. The ripples of alliance and opposition spread further still, reaching the golden fields of the Reach, where Olenna Tyrell tends her roses in the gardens of Highgarden. The Queen of Thorns may be past her 70th year, but her mind remains as sharp as any blade, and she recognizes opportunity when it presents itself. She finds her son Mace in the castle's great hall, surrounded by stewards and ledgers as he manages the vast wealth of their house. The Lord of Highgarden looks up hopefully as his mother approaches, ever eager for her counsel, despite their frequent disagreements. "Mother, you've heard the news from the north?" "I've heard that Robert Baratheon has finally revealed himself to be the fool I always knew him to be," Olenna replies tartly, settling into a chair with the careful movements of advanced age. Starting a war over a bastard boy, typical Robert, all emotion and no thought. "The boy isn't a bastard, Mother. The reports say he's Rhaegar's true son. Even better. A Targaryen restoration would shake up the entire realm, create opportunities for those wise enough to position themselves properly." Olenna's aged eyes glitter with calculation. "Send a raven to Ned Stark. Tell him House Tyrell remains officially neutral in this conflict, but that certain private parties wish the North well in its time of troubles. You mean to support them? I mean to hedge our bets, you great oaf. Send gold north, but quietly. If the Starks win, we'll have their gratitude. If they lose, we can deny any involvement." She waves a dismissive hand. "Really, Mace, must I explain every detail of statecraft to you?" The web of alliances grows more complex still as news reaches the Iron Islands, where Bolon Greyjoy broods in his sea tower at Pike. The Lord of the Iron Islands has spent years watching the mainland kingdoms grow fat and complacent, waiting for the right moment to remind them that the Ironborn still remember the old ways. He stands on his battlements as grey waves crash against the rocks below, salt spray stinging his weathered face. His brother Victarion joins him, the formidable warrior's presence as solid and dependable as the ancient stones beneath their feet. "The Greenlands tear themselves apart," Victarion observes, his deep voice barely audible above the wind. "Stark against the crown, Dornish spears marching north. It's the perfect time to strike." Balon nods slowly, his dark eyes fixed on the distant horizon, where merchant ships ply the profitable trade routes between the kingdoms. "Ready the longships," he commands, "while the wolves and stags savage each other. The Kraken will feast on their undefended shores." But perhaps nowhere is the crisis felt more acutely than at Castle Black itself, where the Night's Watch faces the unprecedented challenge of choosing between their vows and their consciences. The great hall buzzes with tense conversation as Black brothers debate the impossible situation that has befallen their order. Jon Snow sits at the high table beside Lord Commander Mormont, acutely aware of the divided loyalties that fracture the room before them. Some brothers watch him with admiration and loyalty, seeing in him the same qualities that made him their friend and comrade. Others regard him with suspicion and fear, viewing his royal blood as a corruption of everything the Night's Watch represents. Sir Alliser Thorne stands near the far wall, his scarred face twisted with barely contained contempt. Around him cluster the brothers who believe Jon should be surrendered to the crown's justice, their black cloaks like a murder of crows gathered for a feast. "The boy brought this curse upon us all," mutters Othel Yarwick, the first builder. "We should have seen the signs, should have known something was wrong about him." "Jon Snow has served the watch with honor," Sam Tarley speaks up from his seat near the hearth, his voice shaking but determined. "His parentage doesn't change that, doesn't it?" Thorne steps forward, his hand resting on his sword hilt. "He's made us all oath-breakers by association. When the king's men arrive, they'll brand every man here a traitor to the realm." The argument might have continued indefinitely, but the sound of horns from the wall cuts through the debate. 3 long blasts echo across the ancient stones, the signal for others sighted beyond the wall. But tonight, the horns carry a different message. Riders, the Game of Thrones has come to the wall at last, and nothing will ever be the same. The realm holds its breath as armies converge on the frozen north, each carrying the hopes and ambitions of their lords. Unlikely alliances bind former enemies together, while ancient friendships shatter under the weight of impossible choices. In the end, only one thing remains certain. Before the snows melt and spring returns to Westeros, the fate of kings and kingdoms will be decided in the shadow of the wall. Chapter 7. Black Brothers Divided. The Great Hall of Castle. Black has never hosted a gathering quite like this one. Every sworn brother who can walk has been summoned from their duties, filling the ancient chamber with a sea of black wool and weathered faces. Rangers lean against the stone pillars, their swords and axes close at hand. Stewards cluster near the hearth, their soft hands clasped nervously before them. Builders stand in rough groups, their calloused fingers drumming against their legs with barely contained tension. Lord Commander Jeor Mormont sits at the high table, his weathered face grave as he surveys the assembled brothers. To his right, Maester Aemon occupies his customary seat, the old man's blind eyes fixed on something beyond the physical world. Jon Snow sits to Mormont's left, acutely aware of every gaze that falls upon him, some filled with loyalty, others with suspicion, many with simple fear of what comes next. The silence stretches until it becomes almost unbearable. Then Mormont rises slowly, his chair scraping against the stone floor with a sound like grinding bones. Every conversation dies away as the assembled brothers turn their attention to their Lord Commander. "Brothers," Mormont begins, his voice carrying clearly through the hall, "we face a crisis unlike any in the long history of our order. Rumors and half-truths have spread through our ranks like wildfire, threatening to tear apart the bonds that unite us." Sir Alistair Thorne shifts near the far wall, his scarred face twisted with barely contained anger. Around him, a significant portion of the Watch's officers and men nod in agreement with the unspoken sentiment that Jon Snow has brought this curse upon them all. "Rather than allow speculation to poison our brotherhood," Mormont continues, "I will speak the truth plainly. Jon Snow, whom we have all known as the Bastard of Winterfell, is in fact the true-born son of Prince Rhaegar Targaryen and Lady Lyanna Stark. His true name is Aegon Targaryen, and by rights of blood and birth, he is the rightful king of the 7 kingdoms." The words fall like hammers on an anvil, each one ringing with finality. Even those who suspected the truth feel the weight of hearing it confirmed by their Lord Commander. The hall erupts in murmurs and gasps, brothers turning to each other with expressions of shock and confusion. "This is madness!" Thorne's voice cuts through the noise like a blade through silk. He steps forward from his position against the wall, his hand instinctively moving to rest on his sword hilt. "You would have us believe that we've harbored a Targaryen pretender all this time?" "I would have you believe the truth," Mormont replies calmly. The evidence is overwhelming, and it comes from sources beyond reproach. Janos Slynt pushes forward through the crowd, his thick features flushed with self-importance. I was the one who alerted the Crown to this situation, and I did so out of loyalty to King Robert. The boy must be surrendered immediately, before we're all branded traitors to the realm. A chorus of agreement rises from perhaps half the assembled brothers. These men have families in the Seven Kingdoms, property that could be seized, loved ones who could suffer if the Night's Watch is branded treasonous. They joined the Watch to serve the realm, not to protect enemies of the Crown. But an equally vocal group rallies around a different banner. These are men who have fought beside Jon Snow, who have seen his courage and honor firsthand. To them, his bloodline matters far less than his character. Jon Snow saved my life beyond the wall, calls out Gren, one of Jon's fellow recruits. Whatever his name might be, he's proven himself a true brother of the Night's Watch. Aye, agrees Pip, another of Jon's friends. He's bled with us, fought with us, shared our hardships. That's worth more than any crown or title. The hall divides visibly as brothers choose sides, clustering into two distinct groups that eye each other with growing hostility. Years of shared service and mutual respect begin to crumble under the weight of impossible choices. Thorn sees his moment and seizes it. "Listen to yourselves!" he shouts, his voice dripping with contempt. "You would protect a Targaryen because he smiled at you and shared your porridge? The Mad King's grandson stands among us, and you speak of friendship and shared hardship." The Mad King was Aegon's great-grandfather, not his father, Sam Tarly says quietly, but his words carry clearly in the tense silence. And Jon Snow, whether that's his true name or not, has shown none of the madness that afflicted that branch of the family tree. All eyes turn to the young steward as he steps forward, his round face pale but determined. Sam has never been a warrior, never commanded respect through strength of arms or force of personality. But he possesses something equally valuable, the courage of absolute conviction. "I know Jon Snow better than any man in this hall," Sam continues, his voice growing stronger with each word. "I've seen him risk his life to save others. I've watched him choose duty over desire, honor over advantage. If this man carries the blood of kings, then perhaps it's time the realm had a king worthy of the title." The speech sends ripples through both factions. Even some of Thorne's supporters seem momentarily swayed by Sam's passionate defense of Jon's character. But Thorne himself remains unmoved, his scarred features twisted with disdain. "Pretty words from a craven," Thorne sneers. "But words won't save us when the king's justice arrives at our gates. That boy's very presence makes us all oathbreakers by association." The tension in the hall ratchets higher as hands drift toward sword hilts and voices rise in anger. Brother faces brother across an ideological divide that seems impossible to bridge. The Night's Watch, which has stood united for thousands of years, teeters on the brink of civil war. Jon can bear it no longer. He rises from his seat at the high table, and the simple motion draws every eye in the hall. When he speaks, his voice carries the quiet authority that has marked him as a leader among his peers. "Enough," he says simply. "I won't be the cause of bloodshed between brothers." The hall falls silent as Jon steps down from the high table and walks to the center of the room, placing himself between the two hostile factions. His dark eyes sweep across the assembled faces, seeing friends and enemies, and those who haven't yet decided which they are. "Sir Alistair speaks truly about one thing," Jon continues. "My presence here endangers every man in this hall. When the king's men arrive, they won't distinguish between those who support me and those who oppose me. In their eyes, we're all guilty of harboring a Targaryen. He pauses, letting that truth sink in before delivering his next words. So I'll save you all from that burden. When Sir Ilan Payne arrives, I'll surrender myself to his custody. You can tell King Robert that the Night's Watch remains loyal to the Iron Throne." The offer should have brought relief, but instead it seems to inflame passions on both sides. Thorne nods with grim satisfaction, while Jon's supporters cry out in protest. "You can't!" Gren shouts. "They'll kill you the moment you walk out those gates." "Better one man die than hundreds," Jon replies calmly. "I took the Black to serve the realm. If my death serves that purpose, then so be it." The noble sentiment might have carried the day, but at that moment a new voice enters the debate. Ancient and querulous, it rises from the high table with the authority of decades. "No." Every head turns toward Maester Aemon as the blind old man struggles to his feet. At nearly 100 years old, he moves with painful slowness, but his voice carries clearly through the stunned silence. "I have served the Night's Watch for more than 60 years, Aemon says, his milky eyes seeming to focus on each man in turn despite his blindness. "I have watched a dozen Lord Commanders come and go. I have seen brothers die beyond the wall and in their beds. But I have never seen the Watch face a choice as clear as this one." He pauses, letting his words sink in before continuing with growing strength. "This young man carries the blood of my family, the blood of kings who ruled Westeros for 3 centuries. But more than that, he carries the qualities that made the best of those kings worthy of their crowns." Aemon's declaration hits the hall like a thunderbolt. The brothers knew he was old, but few remember that he was born a Targaryen prince himself, that he gave up his claim to serve the Watch. "I declare before you all that Aegon Targaryen, called Jon Snow, is the rightful king of the 7 kingdoms, and I call upon every sworn brother of the Night's Watch to protect him. As our oaths demand, we protect the realm." The hall explodes into chaos. Thorne's faction roars in outrage, while Jon's supporters cheer. Steel rings as swords are drawn, and what began as a war of words threatens to become a war of blades. "You've doomed us all, old man," Thorne shouts, his sword glinting in the torchlight. "The Night's Watch serves no kings." "We serve the realm," Aemon replies calmly. "And sometimes the realm needs a true king to heal its wounds." Violence hangs in the air like smoke from a forge. Brother faces brother with naked steel, the sacred bonds of the Night's Watch stretched to their breaking point. Some men back toward the doors, wanting no part of a fight between their sworn brothers. Others press forward, eager to settle old grievances with blood. Lord Commander Mormont tries desperately to restore order, but his voice is lost in the tumult. The carefully maintained discipline of the Watch crumbles as passion overwhelms duty. Then Jon Snow does something that surprises everyone. He drops to one knee in the center of the hall, placing himself at the mercy of every drawn blade around him. "I am one man," he says, loudly enough to be heard over the chaos. "If my death will restore peace to this brotherhood, then take it. But don't spill each other's blood over me. The realm has seen enough brother fighting brother." The gesture shocks the hall into momentary silence. Here stands a young man who could claim a crown, who has supporters willing to fight and die for him, choosing instead to offer his own life to preserve the peace. But the silence doesn't last. Thorne steps forward, his sword raised to deliver the killing blow that will end the crisis once and for all. "So be it, Targaryen. Your death will—" The steel never falls. As Thorne draws back his blade, Sam Tarly throws himself between Jon and the descending sword. The young steward's own blade, little more than a kitchen knife, trembles in his hands, but his resolve doesn't waver. "If you want to kill Jon Snow," Sam says, his voice shaking but determined. "You'll have to go through me first." It's a pathetic sight in many ways. The craven steward facing down a seasoned warrior with nothing but courage and friendship as his armor. But sometimes the most pathetic gestures carry the greatest power. One by one, other brothers step forward to stand with Sam. Gren and Pip are among the first, but they're followed by rangers and builders, old hands and new recruits. Within moments, Jon is surrounded by a wall of black-cloaked brothers, all willing to die before they'll see him harmed. The sight breaks something in Thorne's fierce resolve. He looks around the hall and sees not enemies to be defeated, but brothers he has served with for years. The sword wavers in his grip as the full horror of what they're all contemplating sinks in. But before the moment can resolve itself one way or another, a horn sounds from the walls above. 3 long blasts echo through the ancient stones, not the signal for others, but the approach of riders from the south. "Sir Ilyn Payne," Mormont says grimly. "The king's justice has arrived." The horn's echo fades, leaving the hall in absolute silence. Outside, they can hear the sounds of horses and men, the creak of leather and the clink of mail. The royal executioner has come to Castle Black, bringing Robert's wrath with him. Jon rises slowly from his knees, his face calm despite the storm raging around him. "The choice is made for us now," he says quietly. "Whatever happens next, remember that we are brothers of the Night's Watch. We are the shield that guards the realms of men." Thorne slowly sheathes his sword, his scarred face etched with conflicting emotions. The approaching riders have changed everything, forced them all to confront the reality of their situation. "Aye," he says finally, his voice rough with emotion. "We are brothers. Whatever else we are, whatever choices we make, we are brothers." The words carry weight beyond their simple meaning. In the face of outside threats, the ancient bonds of the Night's Watch reassert themselves. The civil war may not be over, but it's suspended in favor of the larger crisis, bearing down on them all. Through the narrow windows, they can see torches flickering in the gathering dusk as the royal column approaches Castle Black's gates. Soon, Jon Snow will face his accusers, and the Night's Watch will discover whether their bonds of brotherhood can survive the Game of Thrones. The hall remains divided, but it's no longer on the verge of bloodshed. Brothers who, moments before, were ready to kill each other, now stand united in their uncertainty, bound together by the knowledge that their world is about to change forever. Outside the walls, the future rides toward them, with steel in its hands and death in its wake. Chapter 8. Convergence at the wall. The frozen ground around Castle Black trembles under the hoofbeats of 1,000 horses as Lord Eddard Stark's army crests the final hill before the wall. Banners snap in the bitter wind. The grey direwolf of House Stark flanked by the giant of House Umber and the crowned skull of House Karstark. Behind them march the stolid men of the north, their faces grim with purpose and their weapons sharp with winter's edge. Ned rides at the head of the column, his weathered face set in lines of determination that have hardened during the long march from Winterfell. Beside him, his son Robb sits straight in his saddle, the young man's eyes bright with the anticipation of his first real battle. The boy has grown during this campaign, leaving behind the last traces of childhood to become the warrior and leader the North will need in the dark days ahead. "There," Ned says quietly, pointing toward the massive wall of ice that dominates the northern horizon. Castle Black. The ancient fortress looks smaller than Robb expected, dwarfed by the 700-foot wall that stretches away into the distance on either side. But its position is commanding, controlling the narrow gap between the wall and the forest, where any army must pass to reach the gates. "Father," Robb says, his voice tight with concern. "The royal forces." Ned follows his son's gaze to the south, where columns of smoke rise from a large encampment, perhaps 2 miles from Castle Black's main gate. Even from this distance, they can see the golden banners of House Lannister flying alongside the crowned stag of House Baratheon. Sir Ilan Payne's modest force has been reinforced by a much larger army. "Tywin Lannister," Ned murmurs, recognizing the disciplined organization of the camp below. He's taken command of the royal forces. The news is both good and bad. Good because Tywin is infinitely more competent than Sir Ilan Payne, making negotiations possible. Bad because the Lord of Casterly Rock is also far more dangerous, with the resources and tactical skill to make any battle costly beyond measure. Ned turns to Sir Roderick Castle, who rides just behind them with the Stark household guard. "Deploy our forces to secure the approaches to Castle Black's main gate. I want every path from the south covered, but avoid any aggressive moves. We're here to protect Jon, not start a war." "Yes, my lord," Sir Roderick replies, wheeling his horse to carry out the orders. Within the hour, the northern army has taken position in a defensive line that blocks any direct approach to Castle Black, while leaving room for negotiation. Stark banners flutter defiantly in the wind, a clear signal that the North has come to protect its own. From the walls of Castle Black, Lord Commander Mormont watches the deployment with growing unease. The arrival of Ned Stark's forces offers hope for Jon's survival, but it also escalates the conflict beyond any possibility of quiet resolution. The Game of Thrones has come to the wall in earnest, and the Night's Watch finds itself caught between opposing armies. Jon Snow stands beside his Lord Commander on the wall's parapet, his dark eyes fixed on the Stark banners below. Somewhere in that host rides the man who raised him as a son, who protected him for 18 years with lies and love in equal measure. The sight fills him with both gratitude and guilt. Gratitude for such loyalty, guilt for the price it may extract. "They shouldn't have come," Jon says quietly. "Too many good men will die for my sake." "They came because you are worth dying for," Mormont replies. "That says more about your character than any royal blood in your veins." Their conversation is interrupted by shouts from the eastern watchtower. A new force approaches Castle Black from that direction, and the banners they fly send ripples of excitement through the assembled armies. Prince Oberyn Martell of Dorne rides at the head of 500 cavalry, their spears gleaming like a forest of steel in the afternoon sun. The red sun and golden spear of House Martell dominates their battle standard, but other Dornish houses have sent men as well. The Danes of Starfall, the Ironwoods of Ironwood, the Fowlers of Skyreach, the cream of Dornish nobility has answered the call to protect Rhaegar's son. Oberyn himself is a sight to behold, his armor polished to mirror brightness, and his helm crowned with a golden snake that coils around a spear point. The Red Viper of Dawn has come north for war, and his very presence changes the balance of forces around Castle Black. The Dornish cavalry takes position east of the royal camp, not quite close enough to threaten attack, but near enough to influence any tactical planning. Their message is clear. Any move against Jon Snow will face opposition from multiple kingdoms, not just the isolated north. "By the gods," Mormont breathes as he counts the banners below. "Half the 7 kingdoms are represented in this field." But the arrivals aren't finished. As the sun begins its descent toward the western peaks, another force makes its presence known. Ships appear on the narrow sea to the east, their black sails clearly visible from the wall's heights. The 3-headed dragon of House Targaryen flies from the lead vessel's masthead, but it's the crowned stag on a yellow field that identifies the fleet's true commander. Stannis Baratheon has brought his strength to bear on the crisis, sailing his war fleet to Eastwatch by the sea in a move that threatens the royal army's eastern flank. His ships control the waters offshore, preventing any reinforcement or retreat by sea, while his marines prepare to land and march west to Castle Black. In the royal camp, Tywin Lannister receives reports of these new arrivals, with the cold calculation that has made him the most feared strategist in Westeros. He stands in his command tent, surrounded by maps and dispatches, his pale green eyes studying the tactical situation with growing concern. "The Dornish No. 500 horse," reports Sir Kevin Lannister, Tywin's younger brother and most trusted lieutenant. "Good cavalry, well equipped, and led by Oberyn Martell himself." And Stannis? Perhaps 1,000 men aboard his ships, with the possibility of more following. His position at Eastwatch gives him control of our eastern flank and blocks any retreat by sea. Tywin nods grimly. The situation has evolved far beyond a simple arrest operation into something approaching a major battle between multiple kingdoms. The political implications alone are staggering, but the immediate tactical reality is even more pressing. What of our own strength? 3,000 men, my lord. Good quality troops, but we're outnumbered if all the enemy forces combine against us. Tywin studies the map before him, noting the positions of each army and the terrain between them. Castle Black sits like a cork in a bottle, controlling the only practical approach through the wall. To reach Jon Snow, the royal forces would have to assault a fortified position defended by multiple armies. The cost would be enormous, the outcome uncertain. "Send word to Lord Stark," Tywin decides. "Request a parley under the traditional banners of truce. Perhaps we can resolve this matter without unnecessary bloodshed." The negotiations take place in a pavilion, erected halfway between the opposing forces, its neutral ground marked by banners of truce from all sides. Ned Stark arrives first, accompanied by his son, Robb and Sir Roderick Cassel. His northern pragmatism shows in every line of his weathered face as he settles into the camp chair provided for his use. Tywin Lannister enters shortly after, his presence immediately dominating the space despite his slight stature. The Lord of Casterly Rock has negotiated with kings and conquered cities, and his confidence shows in every measured step. "Lord Stark," Tywin says with a nod that manages to be both respectful and dismissive. "I confess myself surprised to find you in opposition to the Crown's lawful authority." "I oppose the Crown's attempt to murder an innocent boy," Ned replies evenly. "Jon Snow has done nothing to deserve death save exist." Jon Snow, if that is indeed his name, carries the blood of House Targaryen. In the eyes of King Robert, that alone constitutes treason sufficient for execution. Oberyn Martell chooses that moment to arrive, his entrance theatrical enough to interrupt the careful diplomatic dance between the two older lords. The Red Viper sweeps into the pavilion with a flourish, his golden armor catching the light from the oil lamps. "Forgive my lateness," Oberyn says with a smile that doesn't reach his eyes. "I was admiring the view of your camp from the eastern ridge. Quite impressive, though perhaps not as secure as it appears." The veiled threat hangs in the air as the three lords regard each other with the wariness of predators sharing limited territory. Each represents not just military force, but political power that could reshape the Seven Kingdoms depending on the outcome of these negotiations. "Prince Oberyn," Tywin acknowledges, "I'm surprised to find Dorne involved in what should be a northern matter." The boy in question is the son of Prince Rhaegar Targaryen and Lady Lyanna Stark, Oberyn replies smoothly. "Dorne has compelling reasons to protect him, given our own losses during Robert's rebellion." The mention of those losses, Princess Aelia and her children, murdered during the sack of King's Landing, adds another layer of complexity to the negotiations. Oberyn's presence represents more than military support. It's a reminder of the blood debt that still exists between Dorne and the Crown. The king's terms are simple, Tywin says, attempting to regain control of the conversation. Surrender Jon Snow for execution, and all other parties will be pardoned for their involvement in this unfortunate affair. Unacceptable, Ned responds immediately. I will not hand over my sister's son to be murdered for Robert's political convenience. Then you choose war over peace, Tywin observes. The consequences of that choice will fall upon your own shoulders. The consequences of murdering Rhaegar's heir will fall upon yours, Oberyn counters. Dorne remembers its debts, Lord Tywin, both those owed and those to be collected. The negotiations continue for another hour, but the positions prove irreconcilable. Robert's rage demands Jon's death, while the Allied forces refuse to abandon the boy to royal vengeance. Each side seeks advantage through words, but the fundamental conflict admits no compromise. As the parley dissolves into increasingly hostile exchanges, a commotion outside the pavilion draws their attention. Shouts and the ring of steel on steel echo across the field as the first violence of the crisis erupts. A patrol of royal scouts, pushing too close to the Stark lines in an attempt to gather intelligence, has been intercepted by northern outriders. What began as a minor encounter escalates rapidly as reinforcements arrive from both sides. Swords flash in the fading daylight as men who might have been friends in other circumstances fight for causes larger than themselves. So it begins, Tywin murmurs, rising from his chair as the sounds of battle grow louder. I had hoped wisdom might prevail, but it seems the Seven Kingdoms prefer war. Ned stands as well, his hand instinctively moving to rest on his sword hilt. The war began the moment Robert signed Jon's death warrant. We're simply finishing what he started. The three lords leave the pavilion in different directions, each returning to his army to prepare for the battle that can no longer be avoided. Behind them, the neutral ground lies empty, save for overturned chairs and scattered papers, the physical remnants of diplomacy's failure. On the walls of Castle Black, Jon Snow watches the skirmish unfold with growing dread. Good men die in the field below, their blood staining the frozen ground red, all because of secrets he never asked to learn and a crown he never wanted to claim. I should end this, he tells Lord Commander Mormont, who stands beside him, watching the violence spread. Walk out there and surrender myself before more men die for my sake. You tried that before, Mormont reminds him. Your friends wouldn't let you. Indeed, even now, Sam Tarly and the other loyalist brothers maintain their vigil around Jon, determined to prevent any attempt at self-sacrifice. Their devotion is touching, but it also ensures that the crisis will continue to escalate. As darkness falls over the field around Castle Black, the various armies settle into defensive positions for what promises to be a long and bloody conflict. Campfires flicker like fallen stars across the landscape, each one representing lives that may be lost in the battles to come. The convergence is complete. 4 armies face each other in the shadow of the wall, their loyalties divided by questions of honor, duty, and blood. Tomorrow will bring the decisive battle that determines whether Jon Snow lives or dies, and with him the fate of the Seven Kingdoms. The Game of Thrones has reached its climax in the frozen north, and only the gods know how many will survive to see its conclusion. Chapter 9. Ice and Fire. Dawn breaks cold and grey over the frozen field around Castle Black, its pale light revealing the frost that has gathered on steel and flesh during the night. The various armies stir like waking beasts, men emerging from their tents and bedrolls with breath steaming in the bitter air. Today will bring the battle that determines not just Jon Snow's fate, but the future of the Seven Kingdoms. In the royal camp, Tywin Lannister stands before a great map spread across a campaign table, his pale green eyes studying the tactical situation one final time. His commanders cluster around him, seasoned knights and lords who have followed him through decades of war and politics. The Lord of Casterly Rock cuts an imposing figure even in his battle dress, every inch the general who has never lost a major engagement. The Stark forces hold the high ground before Castle Black's main gate, he observes, pointing to positions marked on the map. We cannot hope to take it by direct assault without enormous casualties. What of the Dornish cavalry, my lord? Asks Sir Kevan Lannister, his brother's most trusted lieutenant. They threaten our eastern flank. Prince Oberyn is too clever to commit his horse to a frontal charge against prepared infantry, Tywin replies. But he'll strike the moment he sees weakness in our lines. We must account for that. The sound of war horns echoes across the field as both sides make their final preparations. Men check their weapons, tighten their armor, and offer prayers to whatever gods they follow. Some will not see another sunset, and all of them know it. Tywin mounts his destrier, a massive black war horse that has carried him through countless battles. Around him, 3,000 men prepare to advance, their steel glinting in the morning light. Golden banners snap in the wind, the Lion of Lannister roaring defiance at the grey wolf of Stark. "For King Robert!" Tywin shouts, his voice carrying across the ranks. "For the Iron Throne!" The royal army moves forward like an avalanche, disciplined formations covering the ground between the camps with methodical precision. Tywin has positioned his heavy infantry at the center, flanked by mounted knights and crossbowmen. It's a formation designed to punch through enemy lines and maintain cohesion under pressure. But the northern forces are ready. Ned Stark sits his horse behind the defensive line his men have constructed during the night, a series of stakes and earthworks that will channel any attack into prepared killing grounds. His banners fly proud in the cold wind, and his men watch the approaching royalists with the steady calm that marks seasoned warriors. "Hold the line," Ned calls to his captains. "Let them come to us." The first clash erupts along the center of the field as royal heavy infantry crashes into the Stark defensive positions. Steel rings against steel in a symphony of violence that echoes off the wall's ancient ice. Men scream and die in the churned mud, their blood steaming in the frigid air. The fighting is brutal and immediate. Tywin's veterans push hard against the northern line, seeking to break through before the other allied forces can intervene. Their discipline shows as they maintain formation, despite heavy casualties, advancing step by bloody step over the bodies of their fallen comrades. But the North remembers its own lessons of war. The men behind the earthworks fight with the desperate courage of those protecting their homes and families. Every yard of ground costs the royalists dearly, and their advance slows as mounting casualties thin their ranks. Then Prince Oberyn Martell strikes. The Red Viper has positioned his cavalry perfectly, waiting for the moment when Tywin's forces are fully committed to the frontal assault. With a wild Dornish war cry, 500 horsemen sweep around the eastern flank in a thundering charge that shakes the frozen ground. Oberyn leads from the front, his golden armor blazing in the morning sun as his stallion carries him toward the enemy line. His spear takes the first royal soldier in the chest, lifting the man from his feet before casting him aside like a broken doll. Behind him, Dornish cavalry crashes into the royal flank with devastating effect. The carefully ordered royal formation buckles under the unexpected assault. Men who, moments before, were pushing forward against the Stark line suddenly find enemies at their sides and rear. Confusion spreads through the ranks as officers try desperately to redeploy their forces to meet this new threat. "Reform! "Reform on me!" Sir Kevan Lannister shouts, trying to rally a group of Lannister men-at-arms. But his words are lost in the chaos of battle as Dornish spears continue their deadly work. From the walls of Castle Black, Jon Snow watches the battle unfold with growing anguish. Good men die below for his sake, their lives spent like coins to purchase his survival. The knowledge burns in his chest worse than any physical wound. "I have to help them," he tells Lord Commander Mormont, who stands beside him on the wall's parapet. "I can't just watch while they die for me." "You'll die the moment you set foot on that battlefield," Mormont replies grimly. "Tywin's men have orders to kill you on sight. Then I'll die fighting instead of cowering behind these walls." Jon turns to leave the parapet, but finds his path blocked by Sam Tarly and a group of loyal Night's Watch brothers. Their faces are set with determination, and their hands rest on their weapons. "You're not going anywhere," Sam says with surprising firmness. "We won't let you throw your life away." The argument might have continued, but a new development on the battlefield draws their attention. From the east, where Stannis Baratheon's ships had been anchored at Eastwatch by the Sea, comes the sound of war horns. A column of men in the colours of House Baratheon marches swiftly across the frozen ground, their banners flying the crowned stag on its field of gold. Stannis himself rides at their head, his jaw set in its characteristic rigid line. He has landed his marines and marched them west during the night, positioning them to strike at the perfect moment. Now, as the battle reaches its climax, he commits his forces to Jon's cause. The appearance of 1,000 fresh troops tips the balance decisively. Already battered by the Dornish cavalry charge, the royal forces find themselves attacked from a third direction. Stannis's disciplined marines slam into their eastern flank with mechanical precision, their advance as inexorable as the tide. It's too much. Even Tywin's legendary tactical skill cannot salvage victory from such overwhelming odds. The royal formation begins to collapse as men break ranks and flee toward their camp. What had been an organized assault becomes a fighting retreat, then a rout. But Jon Snow can no longer bear to watch from the safety of Castle Black's walls. Despite the protests of his friends, he breaks away from their restraining hands and races toward the stairs that lead down to the courtyard. His conscience will not allow him to hide while others die in his name. "Jon, no!" Sam cries, pursuing his friend with the other loyalist brothers close behind. Jon reaches the courtyard to find chaos. Some Night's Watch brothers are preparing to sally forth and aid the allied forces, while others argue that their vows prevent such involvement. The ancient neutrality of the Watch fractures under the pressure of impossible choices. Sir Alliser Thorne stands near the main gate with a group of his supporters, their weapons drawn and their faces twisted with murderous intent. They have seen their chance to end the crisis with Jon's death, regardless of the battle's outcome. "There he is!" Thorne shouts, pointing his sword at Jon. "The Targaryen pretender who brought this curse upon us all." Jon draws his own blade, a castle-forged longsword that has served him well during his year at the wall. Around him, the courtyard divides as brothers choose sides in this final confrontation. "I never asked for this, Sir Alliser," Jon says, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. "But I won't run from it anymore." The two groups of Black brothers face each other across the stone courtyard, years of simmering resentment finally boiling over into open violence. Steel rings as weapons are drawn, the sound echoing off Castle Black's ancient walls. Then the main gate shudders under a tremendous impact. Royal forces have broken through the Allied lines and reached the castle itself, their battering rams splintering the aged wood. In moments, armed men will pour through the breach, bringing death to everyone inside. The external threat forces the divided Night's Watch to remember their deeper loyalties. Thorne looks from Jon to the failing gate, his scarred face twisted with conflicting emotions. "Damn you, Snow," he growls, "but not even you deserve to die at the hands of these southern bastards." Together, the Black brothers race toward the gate as the first royal soldiers pour through the breach. Steel meets steel in the narrow confines of the tunnel, where superior numbers count for less than skill and determination. Jon fights beside men who moments before were ready to kill him, their common cause transcending personal animosities. His blade takes a Lannister man-at-arms in the throat, then parries a spear thrust from another. The fighting is close and brutal, each man fighting for mere inches of ground. But the tide has already turned outside. As royal forces retreat across the field, their assault on Castle Black loses momentum. The men who broke through the gate find themselves cut off and surrounded, fighting desperately against impossible odds. Prince Oberyn Martell arrives like vengeance incarnate, his bloodied spear clearing a path through the melee. He reaches Jon's side just as two royal champions press forward, their swords seeking the Targaryen prince's life. "Back to back," Oberyn shouts, spinning his spear in a deadly arc that opens one champion from collarbone to hip. Jon parries the second champion's thrust and riposts, with a cut that takes the man's sword arm at the wrist. The royal knight screams and falls, his life bleeding out on the stones of Castle Black. Around them, the last of the royal assault force surrenders or dies. The battle for Castle Black is over, but the larger conflict continues outside the walls. On the field beyond, Tywin Lannister tries desperately to organize a fighting withdrawal. His tactical genius shows even in defeat as he forms his remaining forces into a defensive square, hoping to extract some portion of his army from the disaster. But three converging forces make escape impossible. Northern infantry presses from the west, Dornish cavalry harries the flanks, and Stannis' marines block retreat to the south. The royal army finds itself surrounded, outnumbered, and demoralized. "Surrender!" Ned Stark calls across the field, his voice carrying clearly in the sudden lull. "Yield now and spare your men further bloodshed." For a moment, it seems Tywin might comply. The Lord of Casterly Rock sits his war horse in the center of his shrinking formation, his calculating mind weighing options that grow fewer by the minute. Around him, his soldiers look to their commander, with hope that he can somehow extract them from this catastrophe. Then something changes in Tywin's expression. Perhaps it's pride, perhaps desperation, but the old lion chooses to make one final play. With a roar that would do his house sigil proud, he spurs his destrier toward the Stark lines in a last desperate charge. It's magnificent and futile in equal measure. Tywin cuts down two northern men-at-arms before a thrown spear takes his horse in the chest. The great black destrier crashes to the frozen ground, pinning its rider beneath its weight. Ned Stark reaches the fallen lord first, his sword point hovering over Tywin's throat. The most feared man in Westeros lies helpless in the mud, his leg twisted at an unnatural angle, and his proud armor dented and blood-stained. "Yould," Ned says quietly. "It's over, Tywin." The Lord of Casterly Rock looks up at his captor, with eyes that still burn with unquenched fire. For a heartbeat, it seems he might refuse even now. Then reality reasserts itself, and he nods once. "I yield," he says, the words tasting like ashes in his mouth. The surrender spreads rapidly through the remaining royal forces. Weapons drop to the ground as soldiers throw themselves on the mercy of their captors. The Battle of Castle Black is over, and Jon Snow's supporters have won a complete victory. As the sun climbs toward its zenith, the true scope of the triumph becomes clear. The royal army lies shattered, its commanders dead or captured. Hundreds of soldiers have defected to Jon's cause during the battle, swayed by his courage in fighting beside common men rather than hiding behind castle walls. Jon stands in Castle Black's courtyard, surrounded by the living and the dead. His sword drips with the blood of enemies, but his face shows no triumph, only sorrow for the price of victory. Sam Tarly approaches cautiously, his round face pale with exhaustion and relief. "It's over, Jon. You're safe." Jon looks out at the battlefield, where men still tend the wounded and count the dead. Smoke rises from burning equipment and funeral pyres, carrying the souls of the fallen toward whatever gods they served. "No," he says quietly. "It's just beginning. The battle has been won, but the war for the Seven Kingdoms is far from over." In King's Landing, Robert Baratheon will rage when he learns of this defeat. Other lords will choose sides as word spreads across the realm. The Game of Thrones has entered a new phase, one that will reshape Westeros forever. But for now, in this moment, justice has prevailed. The rightful king stands victorious in the shadow of the wall, protected by men who chose honor over safety, courage over comfort. The dragon has awakened, and the realm will never be the same. Chapter 10. The Dragon's Choice. 3 days after the Battle of Castle Black, the great hall that once hosted a fractured night's watch now accommodates something far more momentous. A great council, unlike any seen since the Dance of Dragons 2 centuries past. Representatives from across the Seven Kingdoms have gathered in this unlikely venue to witness history in the making. Jon Snow sits at the high table, where Lord Commander Mormont once presided over simple matters of duty and discipline. Now he faces lords and princes who have come to discuss the future of the realm itself. The irony is not lost on him. The bastard who sought only to disappear into the anonymity of the Night's Watch finds himself at the center of the greatest political transformation in living memory. Lord Eddard Stark rises from his place at the table's right hand, his weathered face grave with the weight of what he must say. The man who has protected Jon's secret for 18 years now prepares to reveal it to the assembled nobles of Westeros. "Lords and ladies," Ned begins, his voice carrying clearly through the packed hall. "We gather today to address matters that will shape the fate of the Seven Kingdoms for generations to come." He pauses, his grey eyes finding Jon's across the table. So much passes between them in that moment. Gratitude, love, and the shared understanding that their relationship will never be the same after today's revelations. "For 18 years, I have carried a burden given to me by my dying sister, a promise made in blood and sealed with love." Ned's voice grows stronger as he speaks the words that will change everything. "The young man you know as Jon Snow, bastard of Winterfell, is in truth Aegon Targaryen, true-born son of Prince Rhaegar and Lady Lyanna Stark." The hall erupts in murmurs and gasps, though most present have heard rumors of this revelation. Still, hearing it confirmed by Ned Stark himself carries weight beyond any whispered gossip. The hand of the Mad King's grandson sits among them, and the implications stagger even the most seasoned political minds. Maester Aemon struggles to his feet with the careful movements of extreme age. At nearly 100 years old, he represents the last living link to the Targaryen dynasty's glory days. When he speaks, his voice carries the authority of blood and history. "I have served the Night's Watch for more than 60 years, Aemon says, his blind eyes somehow seeming to focus on each face in turn. "But before I was a maester, I was Prince Aemon Targaryen, third son of King Maekar. I renounced my claim to serve a higher purpose, but I never renounced my blood." He extends a gnarled hand toward Jon, his voice rising with surprising strength. "I proclaim before this assembled company that Aegon Targaryen, called Jon Snow, is the rightful king of the Seven Kingdoms. The blood of dragons flows in his veins, but more importantly, the qualities of true kingship shine in his heart." The formal proclamation sends another wave of excitement through the hall. Some lords nod in agreement, while others shift uncomfortably in their seats. The political calculus of the realm has just shifted beneath their feet, and each must decide where their loyalty lies. Stannis Baratheon rises next, his rigid features set in the familiar mask of duty and justice. The Lord of Dragonstone has never been known for sentiment, but his words carry the weight of absolute conviction. "I have spent my life serving my brother's crown," Stannis declares, his voice cutting through the lingering murmurs. "But Robert won his throne through conquest, not birthright. If a truer claim exists, then duty demands I acknowledge it." The admission stuns the assembly. Stannis Baratheon, perhaps the most inflexible man in the Seven Kingdoms, publicly renouncing his family's claim to support a Targaryen restoration. Moreover, Stannis continues, his dark eyes fixed on Jon with uncomfortable intensity. "I believe this young man may be the prince that was promised. The prophecies speak of one born of ice and fire, and who else fits that description better than the son of a Stark and a Targaryen?" Prince Oberyn Martell adds his voice to the growing chorus of support. The Red Viper speaks with the passion that marks all his public statements. But beneath the rhetoric lies genuine conviction. "Dawn remembers Princess Aelia and her children, murdered to secure Robert's throne," Oberyn says, his words carrying the weight of long-nursed grievances. "If Rhaegar's line can be restored through this boy, then justice may finally be served. The sun of dawn will shine upon a Targaryen king once more." One by one, other lords speak their support. The great Jon Umber pledges the loyalty of the northern houses. Lord Royce speaks for the Vale, citing Jon Arryn's private conversations about the boy's potential. Even some former royalist commanders, swayed by Jon's courage during the battle, offer their swords to his service. But through it all, Jon himself remains silent. He listens to the grand speeches and political declarations with growing unease, his dark eyes reflecting an inner turmoil that threatens to overwhelm him. When Lord Mormont finally calls upon him to speak, the words come with visible difficulty. "I am honored by your faith in me," Jon begins, his voice barely above a whisper. "But I must ask, what kind of king would I be? I am 18 years old. I have never ruled anything larger than a ranging party. I know nothing of governance or statecraft." "You know justice," Ned interjects firmly. "You know honor. You know what it means to sacrifice for others. Those qualities matter more than age or experience." Jon rises from his seat and moves to the great window that looks out over the wall. The ancient ice stretches away into the distance, a reminder of the larger threats that face the realm beyond the Game of Thrones. "Look around you," he says, gesturing to the assembled lords. "Houses that have fought each other for centuries, united only by the accident of my birth. Is that the foundation for a stable kingdom?" He turns back to face the assembly, his young face etched with a wisdom beyond his years. "The Iron Throne was forged by conquest and held by force. Every generation sees rebellion and civil war as ambitious lords press their claims. How many thousands have died to keep one family or another in power?" The hall falls silent as Jon's words sink in. He is not rejecting their offer of kingship outright, but he is questioning the very nature of the crown they wish to place upon his head. "If I am to be king," Jon continues, his voice growing stronger with each word, then I will not be the kind of king Westeros has known before. I will not sit on a throne made of swords, dispensing judgment from above like some distant god. He begins to pace before the high table, his passion building as he gives voice to thoughts that have been forming since the first revelation of his true parentage. The 7 kingdoms have remained, 7 for 3 centuries, held together only by the threat of dragonfire. But what if they were truly united? What if each kingdom maintained its own laws and customs while contributing to the common defense? What if the king served the realm instead of the other way around? The revolutionary nature of Jon's proposal strikes the assembly like a physical blow. He is suggesting nothing less than a complete transformation of how Westeros is governed, a rejection of centuries of tradition in favor of something entirely new. "You speak of federation," Lord Royce observes, his voice thoughtful, "of voluntary union rather than imposed rule." "I speak of justice," Jon replies, "of recognizing that a Dornish prince knows Dorne better than any king in King's Landing ever could. Of acknowledging that the North's harsh winters require different laws than the Reach's endless summers." Oberyn Martell leans forward in his chair, his dark eyes bright with interest. "And how would disputes between kingdoms be resolved? Who would command in times of war?" "A council of equals," Jon answers without hesitation. "Representatives from each kingdom, chosen by their own people. The king would serve as arbiter and commander, but his power would be balanced by the will of those he serves." The proposal is so radical that it leaves many lords speechless. They came expecting to crown a new king in the traditional mold, but Jon is offering them something they never imagined, a chance to reshape the very foundations of their society. Maester Aemon speaks into the stunned silence, his ancient voice filled with wonder. 300 years ago, Aegon the Conqueror united the 7 kingdoms through fire and blood. Perhaps it is fitting that another Aegon would unite them through wisdom and justice. The old master's words seem to break the spell that has held the assembly. Conversations break out across the hall as lords discuss this unexpected development among themselves. Some are intrigued by the possibilities, while others are clearly uncomfortable with such radical change. Ned Stark studies his foster son with pride and concern in equal measure. "The path you propose will not be easy, Jon. There will be those who prefer the old ways, who will fight to preserve the traditional order. There will always be those who profit from chaos and division," Jon acknowledges. "But there will also be those who dream of something better. The question is whether we have the courage to build it." Stannis Baratheon nods slowly, his rigid sense of justice clearly attracted to Jon's vision. You would need to establish new institutions, new laws, the work of generations compressed into a single reign. "Then it's fortunate I'm young," Jon replies with a slight smile. "I'll have a long time to get it right." The debate continues through the afternoon and into the evening. Lords present practical objections and political concerns, while Jon answers each with the quiet confidence that has marked him since childhood. Gradually, even the skeptics begin to see the merit in his proposals. As the candles burn low and the discussion winds toward its conclusion, Prince Oberyn rises once more. "You ask us to follow you into uncharted waters, young dragon, but you offer us something no king has ever promised, the chance to be partners rather than subjects." "I offer you what I would want for myself," Jon says simply, "the chance to serve something greater than ambition or pride." Lord Mormont calls for a formal vote, though the outcome is no longer in doubt. One by one, the assembled lords pledge their support, not just to Jon's claim, but to his vision of what the 7 kingdoms could become. When the last vote is counted, Jon Snow, Aegon Targaryen, is proclaimed King of the Seven Kingdoms by acclamation, but the crown that will rest upon his head will be unlike any worn before, and the kingdom he will rule will be built on foundations of consent rather than conquest. As the assembly disperses to prepare for the coronation ceremony, Jon remains by the window looking out at the wall. The ancient ice has stood for 8,000 years, protecting the realm from threats beyond mortal comprehension. Soon, he will take on a similar burden, not building walls to divide, but bridges to unite. The bastard boy who wanted only to serve has become a king who will remake the world. The dragon has awakened, but it is a dragon unlike any the Seven Kingdoms have ever known. Tomorrow, Aegon Targaryen will be crowned, but tonight, Jon Snow takes his last moments as a simple man, knowing that everything changes with the dawn. Outside, snow begins to fall once more, covering the battlefield where so many died for his sake. But for the first time since learning his true name, Jon feels the weight of destiny settling upon his shoulders without crushing him. He has found his path at last, and it leads not to the Iron Throne, but to something far greater, a throne built not of swords, but of justice, not of conquest, but of consent. The Game of Thrones is ending, and in its place, something entirely new begins. Chapter 11. A New Order. 6 moons after his coronation at Castle Black, King Aegon Targaryen, called Jon Snow, stands in the great hall of Winterfell as lords and representatives from across the Seven Kingdoms gather for the first Council of Crowns. The ancient seat of House Stark has been transformed into something unprecedented, not just the capital of the North, but the heart of a new kind of kingdom built on partnership rather than conquest. The choice of Winterfell over King's Landing was deliberate and symbolic. The southern capital represents 3 centuries of Targaryen rule through Dragonfire, where kings sat in isolation atop the Iron Throne and dispensed judgment from above. Winterfell, by contrast, embodies the values Jon wishes to bring to his reign: honor, justice, and the understanding that true strength comes from unity freely given. Jon sits not on a throne of swords, but in a chair of carved weirwood placed among 7 other seats arranged in a circle. Each represents one of the former kingdoms, now autonomous regions within the new federation he has crafted. The symbolism is clear. The king serves as first among equals, not as a distant sovereign ruling by divine right. "My lords," Jon begins, his voice carrying easily through the hall, packed with witnesses to history. "We gather today to formally establish the Compact of Crowns, the foundation upon which our new realm will stand." Beside him sits Lord Eddard Stark, no longer just the foster father who protected a bastard boy, but the Lord Protector of the North and Jon's most trusted advisor. The weight of years shows more heavily on Ned now, the burden of revelation and war having aged him beyond his years, but his eyes remain sharp with purpose. The assembled representatives include familiar faces and former enemies alike. Stannis Baratheon occupies the seat reserved for the Stormlands, his rigid posture reflecting the discipline he brings to his new role as Master of Laws. Prince Oberyn Martell speaks for Dorne, his presence a reminder that justice delayed is not justice denied. Lady Olenna Tyrell, despite her advanced age, insisted on representing the Reach personally, her wit as sharp as ever, despite the years. But perhaps the most surprising figure in the circle is Lord Tywin Lannister, who sits as representative of the Westerlands, despite his defeat at Castle Black. The Lord of Casterly Rock bears his captivity with characteristic dignity, understanding that cooperation serves his family's interests better than continued resistance. The pardoning of Lord Tywin was necessary, Jon had explained to those who questioned his mercy. We cannot build a new realm on the foundation of old grievances. Justice must be balanced with pragmatism. The terms of Tywin's pardon were clear: complete submission to the new order in exchange for his life and the preservation of his house's holdings. The proud lord had accepted with the calculating mind that made him the most feared man in Westeros. Better to serve a merciful king than face execution for a cause already lost. The Crown's first official act, Jon continues, will be the destruction of the Iron Throne itself. The Chair of Swords will be melted down and the steel distributed among the kingdoms, symbolizing that power flows from the people, not from the king who sits above them. A murmur of approval ripples through the assembled lords. Many had witnessed the Iron Throne's cruel edge firsthand, had seen how it cut even those who claimed to master it. The symbolic destruction represents more than the end of Targaryen tyranny. It marks the beginning of something entirely new. Maester Aemon, despite his advanced age and growing frailty, serves as Jon's chief counselor in these early days of the new reign. The ancient Targaryen's wisdom proves invaluable in navigating the complex transition from absolute monarchy to federal governance. "Your Grace," Aemon says, in the voice that has grown thin with age, but retains its moral authority, "the Night's Watch requests formal reorganization under the new compact." Jon nods solemnly. The transformation of the Watch had been necessary, but painful. The organization that had served the realm for 8,000 years could not continue in its old form once neutrality became impossible. Too many brothers had chosen sides during the crisis, fracturing the ancient bonds that held them together. "The Night's Watch will be reformed as the Royal Guard of the North," Jon announces. "Those brothers who wish to maintain their vows may do so in service to the defense of the northern borders. Those who prefer to return to their former lives will be released with honor and our gratitude." The decision satisfies no one completely, but provides a workable solution to an impossible situation. Some of the Watch's traditionalists, led by men like Sir Alliser Thorne, chose exile rather than serve under the new arrangement. Others, particularly Jon's friends like Sam Tarly, embraced the opportunity to serve their king directly. As the formal session continues, Jon's thoughts drift to the broader changes sweeping across the realm. King Robert Baratheon, faced with the collapse of his support and the futility of further resistance, accepted Jon's offer of exile rather than death. The former king now lives quietly in the Summer Isles, his legendary appetites satisfied by tropical plenty and distance from the Game of Thrones. Queen Cersei and her children posed a more delicate problem. The queen's hatred burned as fierce as ever, but her golden-haired offspring were innocents caught in the web of their parents' ambitions. Jon's solution balanced justice with mercy: house arrest in comfortable quarters at Casterly Rock, where they could live with dignity while remaining safely removed from political intrigue. The question of succession, Lady Olenna interjects with the directness that has made her the Queen of Thorns, remains unresolved, Your Grace. A king requires heirs. The topic brings Jon back to present concerns and the most politically fraught decision of his young reign. Marriage had been discussed extensively among his councillors, each advocating for alliances that would strengthen different aspects of his rule. "I have given this matter considerable thought," Jon replies, meeting the old woman's shrewd gaze. "The realm's stability requires that all regions feel represented in the royal house. To that end, I propose a marriage alliance with House Tyrell." Lady Olenna's eyebrows rise with surprise and calculation in equal measure. "My granddaughter Margaery, I presume? An excellent choice, Your Grace. The girl has been well trained in statecraft and will serve the realm admirably." The political benefits of the match are obvious to everyone present. House Tyrell commands the loyalty of the Reach, the most populous and fertile of the Seven Kingdoms. Their support ensures the new realm's economic stability, while their influence helps legitimize Jon's radical governmental changes among the more traditional Southern lords. More than that, Jon adds, his voice carrying the conviction that marks all his major decisions, Lady Margaery has shown herself to be intelligent, compassionate, and committed to justice. These are the qualities I value in a partner, not merely political advantage. Prince Oberyn smiles at this declaration, recognizing the romantic idealism that sets Jon apart from the calculating kings who came before him. The realm benefits when its rulers marry for love as well as duty, he observes. Dorne has long understood this truth. The session continues through the afternoon as the practical details of the new government take shape. Each kingdom will maintain its own laws and customs while contributing troops and resources to common defense. Disputes between regions will be resolved by the Council of Crowns, with the king serving as arbiter only when consensus proves impossible. Trade agreements replace tribute requirements, encouraging economic growth through mutual benefit rather than exploitation. The elaborate bureaucracy of King's Landing gives way to streamlined administration focused on coordination rather than control. As evening approaches and the formal business concludes, Jon finds himself walking the walls of Winterfell with Maester Aemon. The old man moves slowly now, leaning heavily on a walking stick, but he insisted on making this final tour of the castle that has become the center of their new world. "Do you ever wonder if we've chosen the right path?" Jon asks, as they pause to look out over the godswood where he played as a child. "So much depends on ideas that have never been tested." Aemon is quiet for a long moment, his blind eyes seeming to see beyond the physical world into realms of possibility and consequence. When he speaks, his voice carries the weight of a century's accumulated wisdom. "I have lived through the reigns of 5 kings," he says finally. "I have seen the Iron Throne cut even those who claimed to master it. What you propose may fail, but the old way had already failed. At least your failure would be noble." "Reassuring words, old friend. I offer truth, not reassurance," Aemon replies with a smile that transforms his ancient features. "But I will say this. In all my years, I have never seen a king who cared more for his subjects' welfare than his own glory. That gives me hope." The conversation is interrupted by the approach of Sam Tarly, whose round face glows with excitement as he hurries across the battlements. The young Maester in training carries a leather satchel bulging with correspondence from across the realm. "Your Grace," Sam pants, offering a thick scroll sealed with the rose of House Tyrell. "Lady Margaery's response to your proposal." Jon breaks the seal with fingers that tremble slightly, aware that this message will determine not just his personal happiness, but the political stability of the 7 kingdoms. As his eyes scan the elegant script, a smile spreads across his face. "She accepts," he announces, the simple words carrying weight beyond their brevity. "The realm will have its queen." The news spreads rapidly through Winterfell's halls, carried by servants and lords alike to every corner of the castle. Church bells ring in celebration, their bronze voices echoing across the northern landscape like a promise of better days ahead. As night falls over Winterfell, Jon stands once more in the great hall, but now it's filled with celebration rather than solemn ceremony. Lords who months ago were enemies toast the health of the king and his bride-to-be. The sound of laughter and music replaces the clash of steel and the cries of the dying. Tywin Lannister approaches through the crowd, his goblet of wine held in a steady hand despite the magnitude of his fall from power. The former hand of the king has adapted to his new circumstances, with characteristic pragmatism. "Your Grace," Tywin says with a bow that manages to convey respect without submission, "I offer my congratulations on your betrothal. Lady Margaery will make an excellent queen." "Thank you, Lord Tywin. Your support of the new compact has not gone unnoticed." The older man's lips curve in what might generously be called a smile. "I have learned that wisdom sometimes requires acknowledging when the game has changed beyond recognition. Your vision may succeed where others have failed." As the evening progresses, Jon finds himself remembering the frightened boy who first arrived at Castle Black, seeking nothing more than purpose and belonging. That boy had found both in ways he never could have imagined, growing into a man capable of reshaping the world itself. The realm enjoys its first taste of peace in living memory. Trade flourishes between regions no longer bound by traditional rivalries. Lord Paramount and small folk alike benefit from the new order's emphasis on justice and mutual prosperity. In the Godswood of Winterfell, beneath the ancient weirwood that has watched over Stark children for generations, Jon Snow, King Aegon Targaryen, kneels one final time as the bastard he once believed himself to be. When he rises, it is as a king who has earned his crown not through conquest, but through the harder path of earning trust and building consensus. The boy who never expected to inherit anything now rules the Seven Kingdoms. The realm that once knew only the iron fist of absolute monarchy now experiences the gentle guidance of federated governance. And in the comfortable chambers of Winterfell's guest tower, an aged maester sleeps peacefully, knowing that his final gift to the world will outlive him by centuries. The new order has taken root, and spring promises to bloom eternal in the realm of the Dragon King who chose justice over power, mercy over vengeance, and love over conquest. Winter is ending, and with it, the long night of tyranny that has shadowed Westeros for 300 years. Chapter 12. The Dragon's Legacy. 5 years have passed since the Battle of Castle Black, and the Seven Kingdoms scarcely resemble the realm that once trembled beneath the Iron Throne's cruel edge. From the Great Hall of Winterfell, King Aegon Targaryen looks out over a transformed world, where prosperity blooms like spring flowers after a harsh winter. The morning sun streams through the ancient windows as Jon reviews reports from across his realm. Each scroll bears testament to the success of his revolutionary approach to governance. Trade routes that once required military escort now operate freely between regions. Disputes that might have sparked wars are resolved through negotiation in the Council of Crowns. The common folk enjoy protections and representation that their ancestors never dared imagine. Queen Margaery enters the Solar with their infant son cradled in her arms, her presence transforming the chamber from a place of business into a sanctuary of family. At 23, she has proven herself every inch the Queen Jon hoped she would become: intelligent, compassionate, and utterly devoted to the welfare of their subjects. "Prince Eddard is restless this morning," she says, with a smile that lights up her lovely face. "I think he's eager to explore the world beyond the nursery." Jon rises from his desk and takes his son into his arms, marveling at how the child represents everything he hoped to achieve. Prince Eddard bears the dark hair of House Stark and the brown eyes of House Tyrell, a living symbol of the unity that now binds the North and South together. He has his grandfather's wandering spirit, Jon observes, thinking of Ned Stark, who died peacefully the previous winter after seeing his foster son's reign firmly established. Perhaps when he's older, we'll take him to see the realm he'll help govern someday. The royal nursery also houses Princess Lyanna, now 3 years old, and possessing her mother's golden curls along with her father's stubborn streak. The little girl has already charmed the northern lords with her fierce independence and quick wit. Together, the royal children embody the hope for a future where the old divisions between kingdoms become merely historical footnotes. A knock at the door interrupts their domestic peace. Sam Tarly enters, now bearing the chain of a full maester and serving as Jon's principal adviser on matters of education and law. His round face glows with the satisfaction of a man who has found his true calling. "Your Grace," Sam says, with a bow that somehow manages to convey both respect and familiarity. "Lord Tywin requests an audience regarding the northern defences." Jon nods, unsurprised by the request. The former Lord of Casterly Rock has become one of his most trusted advisers, his strategic brilliance now directed toward protecting the realm rather than conquering it. The transformation had taken time, but Tywin's pragmatic nature eventually accepted that service to Jon's vision offered more rewards than futile resistance. They gather in the council chamber, where the circular table reflects Jon's commitment to governing through consensus rather than decree. Tywin Lannister sits in his usual place, his silver hair now fully white, but his pale green eyes still sharp with intelligence. Beside him, Prince Oberyn Martell represents Dorne's interests with the same passion he once reserved for revenge. "Your Grace," Tywin begins without preamble, "our scouts report unusual activity beyond the wall. The wildling clans are moving south in greater numbers than we've seen in decades." Jon's expression grows serious. The threat of the others has not materialized as some prophecies suggested, but the lands beyond the wall remain dangerous and unpredictable. The reformed Night's Watch, now called the Northern Guard, maintains constant vigilance against incursions from the true north. "What do our rangers report about the cause of this migration?" Jon asks. "Harsh winters, failed hunts, and rumors of something stirring in the far north," Oberyn replies. "Nothing concrete, but the free folk are not easily frightened. Whatever drives them south must be significant." The discussion that follows exemplifies the collaborative approach that has made Jon's reign so successful. Rather than issuing royal decrees from on high, he listens to diverse perspectives and builds consensus around the best course of action. The decision emerges naturally: increased patrols, diplomatic contact with wildling leaders, and preparation for a potential humanitarian crisis rather than military threat. As the council session concludes, Jon finds himself thinking about how different this approach is from the way kings once ruled. Robert Baratheon would have ordered the wildlings slaughtered without inquiry. The Mad King would have seen conspiracies in every shadow. But Jon has learned that showing strength sometimes means choosing restraint. The true power lies in earning loyalty rather than demanding it. The afternoon brings a more pleasant duty as Jon and his family travel to the Godswood for the weekly custom he has established. Meeting with common folk who seek royal justice. The practice horrified many traditional courtiers when it began, but Jon insisted that a king who serves the people must be accessible to them. Today's petitioners include a village headman seeking mediation in a water rights dispute, a merchant whose goods were unfairly seized by a local lord, and a mother whose son was pressed into service against the kingdom's laws. Each case receives Jon's careful attention, with judgments that balance justice and mercy in equal measure. "Your Grace shows great wisdom," observes Maester Aemon, who despite his age and failing health still insists on attending these sessions. At 105, he represents the last living link to the old Targaryen dynasty, but also the first witness to the new one's promise. "I show what you and Lord Stark taught me," Jon replies quietly, as they watch a satisfied petitioner depart with his grievance resolved. That kingship is service, not privilege. The ancient Meister's blind eyes gleam with satisfaction. I have lived to see 5 kings rule, but only one who truly understood what ruling means. My great-nephew has exceeded every hope I dared harbour. As evening falls over Winterfell, Jon makes his way to the crypts beneath the castle where the Stone Kings of Winter keep their eternal watch. Here lies Ned Stark, the man who raised him as a son and taught him the meaning of honour. The statue's carved face shows the same quiet dignity that marked Ned in life, the same strength that enabled him to protect Jon's secret for 18 years. I hope I've proven worthy of your sacrifice, Jon whispers to the stone figure. The realm you died protecting now thrives beyond anything we could have imagined. But perhaps the most significant change in Jon's reign has been the gradual healing of old wounds that once seemed incurable. The Lannisters serve the crown they once sought to control. Dorne participates eagerly in a union they once resented. The Reach contributes gladly to a throne their ambition once coveted. Even Queen Cersei, despite her continued confinement, has found a measure of peace in her golden cage. Her children have been allowed to pursue their own paths. Joffrey shows promise as a scholar in Old Town, while Myrcella thrives as a ward of House Martell. Only Tommen remains with his mother, the boy's gentle nature making him unsuited for the harsh realities of politics. The transformation extends beyond the nobility to touch every level of society. Small folk enjoy legal protections that prevent arbitrary taxation and conscription. Trade guilds negotiate directly with regional governments rather than paying tribute to distant kings. Education expands as each kingdom establishes schools modeled after the successful program in the north. Crime rates have fallen dramatically as desperation gives way to opportunity. Roads that once required armed escort now see merchants traveling alone with their goods. The Sept of Baelor in King's Landing has been converted into a school, its halls echoing with children's laughter rather than the prayers of the desperate. As night settles over Winterfell, Jon finds himself on the battlements where he once stood as a bastard boy, dreaming of purpose and belonging. The wall stretches across the horizon, its ice gleaming in the moonlight like a promise of eternal vigilance. Margaery joins him there, their children asleep in the nursery under the watchful eyes of trusted guards. Together, they look out over the realm they have helped transform, feeling the weight of responsibility, but also the satisfaction of duty well fulfilled. "Do you ever regret it?" Margaery asks softly. "The crown, the burden, the constant pressure of so many depending on your wisdom?" Jon considers the question carefully, as he considers all things that truly matter. The boy who wanted only to find his place in the world had instead found himself responsible for reshaping it entirely. The weight had been crushing at times, the decisions agonizing, the fear of failure a constant companion. "I regret the cost," he says finally. "The men who died at Castle Black, the families torn apart by civil war, the years of uncertainty before the new order took hold. But I can't regret the result. Look at what we've built together." Below them, Winterfell sleeps peacefully, its inhabitants secure in the knowledge that their king serves justice rather than his own ambition. Across the 7 kingdoms, millions of people enjoy freedoms and protections that their ancestors never knew. Children grow up in a world where merit matters more than birthright, where cooperation yields greater rewards than conquest. The threat beyond the wall remains, as it always has and always will. But now it faces not a fractured realm bleeding from internal strife, but a united federation capable of meeting any challenge through collective action. The kingdoms that once spent their strength fighting each other now stand ready to defend the realms of men together. Maester Aemon's gamble in revealing Jon's true parentage has paid dividends beyond his wildest dreams. The secret that might have destroyed the realm instead became the foundation for its salvation. Truth, it seems, does indeed have power, not to tear down, but to build something better from the ruins of what came before. In the crypts below, the stone kings of winter keep their watch over a Stark who became a Targaryen, and then became something entirely new, a king who chose service over sovereignty, collaboration over conquest. The bastard boy who wanted only to belong had instead taught an entire realm what belonging truly means. As Jon and Margaery make their way back to their chambers, where their children dream peacefully of a future bright with possibility, the realm sleeps secure in the knowledge that morning will bring another day of peace, justice, and hope. The Game of Thrones has ended, replaced by something far greater. A kingdom built on the radical notion that those who rule must serve, that power flows from consent rather than conquest, and that even bastard boys can become the kings their people need. Winter came and went, but spring eternal has taken root in the Seven Kingdoms, watered by the blood of those who dared to dream of something better, and nurtured by those with courage enough to make that dream reality. The dragon's legacy is not fire and blood, but justice and peace. And in that legacy, the realm finds its truest strength, its deepest hope, and its eternal promise of tomorrow. In the end, Jon Snow proved that sometimes the greatest victory is not winning the game, but changing its rules entirely. The bastard who never sought a crown became the king who transformed what kingship means. And the realm, for the first time in 3 centuries, knows peace that flows not from fear, but from faith in the justice of those who serve rather than rule. The wheel has not simply stopped spinning. It has been rebuilt entirely, crafted not of conquest and ambition, but of cooperation and hope. And so the story ends where it began, at the Wall, where a bastard boy once sought purpose and found instead the strength to give purpose to an entire realm. The Game of Thrones is dead. Long live the kingdom of justice,